Chapter 614. Inside Tiandao Sex Offering Spirit Hall, an aura-refining youngster was dozing off when he suddenly heard a light, pew-pew sound. He immediately woke up with a start. He rubbed his eyes and was about to go back to sleep, but when he looked up, he saw that one of the natal lamps in the front row had been extinguished. He looked at the position of the lamp and saw that there was no more light inside. He was scared out of his wits and was at a loss for what to do. Eventually, he ran out of the hall. Martial uncle, it's bad. The foundation building steward of Offering Spirit Hall was facing Yu Xiaozhu. He was a bit impatient to be disturbed. What's with all the noise? Which martial uncle had fallen? There's no need to make such a fuss. No, it's not which grandmaster. The youngster panted. It's the first row. The first row? The steward was terrified. He promptly stood up and rushed into the hall. About a quarter of an hour later, Lu Dequan, who stayed behind to guard the sect, received the news that Fairy Fengqing died. Several days later, Lu Dingyuan in Kuanzhong City received the news, Bichuan Court's transporting formation had been destroyed. Now, there was no sign of human habitation in Linhai town, only ruins were left. Emotienga stood above Linhai town and sighed. A small town disappeared just like that. Qin tone was much colder. This is only the beginning. If the world is really in chaos, Emotienga was silent. What Hupa said was too shocking. It was related to the end of several eras since the distant past era. Now, did they also usher in the end of an era? They could only hope that Hupo's speculation wasn't true and that the world hadn't fallen into chaos yet. A dog's bark came from the ruins. A thin and small figure ran out of the ruins, followed by a wild dog. One man and one dog were fighting over a black object whose original appearance couldn't be seen. This person was thin and small. Judging from his appearance, he was only 8 or 9 years old. Facing the wild dog, which was almost as tall as him, he wasn't afraid at all. He used both his hands and feet, looking extremely fierce. There's someone else. Emotienga was astonished. This child was obviously a mortal and didn't have any spiritual aura on his body. It really wasn't easy for him to live until now. The wild dog swiped down with its paw, tearing off a piece of flesh from the child's leg. However, the child did not make a sound. He ferociously rushed forward and bit down on the wild dog's neck. Even though he was injured by the dog's paw, he did not let go. The wild dog's neck was bitten open, and fresh blood flowed into its throat. The child became even more ferocious. It wasn't until the wild dog's blood ran out and it gradually lost its strength that the ferocious glint in his eyes slowly weakened. When the wild dog died, he sat on the ground and gasped for breath. But after a while, he forced himself to stand up and dragged the dog's body to the edge of the water to wash away the blood. After checking it vigilantly, he returned to his nest step by step. This could really only be considered a nest. In the ruins of Waterfront City, he had built a nest with straw and bricks. After entering the kennel, he looked at the dog's corpse hungrily and wolfed down the black thing. Then he dug out some weeds from the straw, chewed them up, and applied them to the wound. Just as he finished doing this and got up to hide the dog's corpse, the sound of someone stepping on the straw came from outside. He immediately dropped the dog's corpse, picked up a brick on the ground, and hid next to the cave. A shadow appeared at the entrance of the cave. Without looking, he lifted the brick and hit it hard. Ah! In the next moment, he cried out in pain. His hand holding the brick was caught. That person smiled, and something gently knocked his head. Little guy, you're so ruthless. Someone's here. The child widened his eyes in shock. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the smiling young woman holding a fan in front of him. The thing that knocked his head just now was that colorful fan. Fairy! Fairy! As soon as he regained his freedom, the child knelt down and kowtowed desperately. Fairy, please save me. Fairy, please save me. Get up first, Emotienga said. The child was excited for a while before he finally stood up. Emotienga looked him up and down. He was dark and thin. She couldn't see his appearance, but his eyes were full of vitality. His whole body was drenched in blood, and some of his wounds had even begun to fester. She wrinkled her brows and asked, Does it hurt? The child was stunned. Thinking about how he often snatched food from the mouth of wild dogs these days, his eyes were filled with tears. He was struggling to survive all the time, so he didn't have time to think about this kind of question. Now that someone asked him so gently, he couldn't control his tears. It hurts. He sobbed and wiped away the tears that fell from his eyes. Xianxia sighed and gently waved her hand. A cloud of water vapor wrapped him up. The child only felt very comfortable. When he woke up, he didn't feel any pain at all. He looked down and saw that there were no wounds on his body. There wasn't even a scar. He was so happy that he promptly knelt down and kowtowed. "Thank you, fairy. Thank you, fairy. Get up." She swung her sleeves and lifted him up. "Answer a few questions for me." The child nodded while sobbing. "Fairy, please ask. Why are you here alone? Where are your parents and relatives?" The child said, "Fairy, I have no parents and relatives for a long time. I'm an orphan." This answer wasn't surprising. Judging from the way this child fought with wild wolves for food, he definitely wasn't raised by a happy family. Xianxia continued to ask, "Why are you alone here? Where are the other mortals? Are they all dead?" The child said, "Since those sea monsters suddenly appeared, a lot of people died. Later, I heard that immortals came to the west of the mountain, so those sea monsters didn't continue to hurt people. Those who were still alive all went to the immortals through their connections. I'm young, and I'm also a little beggar. They didn't call me, so I didn't have time." "I see." Xianxia sighed. "Are there other people? Don't tell me you're the only one left?" The child shook his head. "There were a few people a few days ago, but I haven't seen them in the past few days." Xianxia nodded. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, the conditions were so bad that not many people could survive until now. "Fairy," seeing that Xianxia didn't speak for a long time, the child said anxiously, "Please take me with you. I'll do anything for you. I can do any kind of rough work." Was he worried that she would leave him behind? Xianxia stared at him and said, "I don't need a manservant." Before he could finish, he heard her say, "You have dual spiritual roots of wood and fire, and you have a firm will. You're a very good seedling for cultivation. Let me ask you, are you willing to go back to Xianxia school with me to seek immortality?" The child opened his mouth and stared at her blankly. Xianxia smiled. "What? You don't want to?" The child seemed to wake up from a dream. He knelt down and kowtowed desperately. "Thank you, fairy. Thank you, fairy. Oh no, thank you, master. Thank you, master." "Wait," Xianxia said, "I'm just taking you to the school. Whether we're fated to be master and disciple depends on the future." "Oh," the child answered blankly. "What's your name?" Xianxia had always liked obedient children. "My name is Xiaoyang." "Xiaoyang, come with me." "Yes, fairy." She led the child out of the ruins. She was already waiting in front. "How was it? Is there anyone else?" she asked. She shook his head with a sigh. Xianxia went to look for the child, so he flew around the surrounding area. Unfortunately, there were no other survivors. "Then let's go." Xianxia didn't feel conflicted. Finding one was already good enough. She nodded and summoned his flying cloud. Fairy Fengqing destroyed the 10,000-li canoe, so they could only rely on themselves now. Alas, nascent soul cultivators should have the air of nascent soul cultivators. Without a portable immortal's cave magic weapon, they'd be too embarrassed to go out. Master had a cloud carriage and a gazebo, Fairy Fengqing had a thatched hut, and the only thing they had was a 10,000-li canoe. They could barely use it to show off, but now they had nothing else. They rushed to Kuanzhong City, travel-worn. Seeing that the sky above Kuanzhong City was full of all kinds of magnificent flying boats and flying cars, Xianxia said enviously, "When are we going to buy a flying boat from the sect? It'll definitely be very impressive when we go out." She cast a glance at her with a smile. "As a nascent soul lord Daoist, you can mobilize the flying boat at will. Why do we need to buy one?" Xianxia said, "The sect's flying boat is always different from our own." She shook his head and said, "On the surface, you look the same as those sect cultivators who started as elite disciples, but on the inside, you're completely different. You can do what you can for the sect, but you can't trust it wholeheartedly. Imotienga was dumbfounded. Does he mean I have some reservations in my heart? Xianxia landed on the platform under the guidance of the welcoming cultivators. Someone came to greet them. Martial Uncle Shoujing, Martial Uncle Qingwei. The two of them saw that it was Han Qingyu. Qingyu. Xianxia showed a rare smile. How have you been? Thank you for your concern, Martial Uncle Shoujing. Master, Grandmaster, and the others are all doing well, Han Qingyu answered with a smile. Imotienga wanted to call her senior martial sister Han out of habit, but she felt it was inappropriate, so she smiled at her as a greeting. Martial uncles, since you've returned safely, you should quickly go see Grandmaster. Grandmaster didn't say anything when you lost contact with him these days, but he was actually quite worried. All right, go do what you need to do. Xianxia was about to leave, but he suddenly remembered something and pointed at Xiaoyang, who was hiding behind Imotienga. We saved this child in the Eastern Sea. His spiritual roots are quite good, so I'll leave him to you for the time being. Han Qingyu carefully looked at Xiaoyang, then nodded with a smile. Rest assured, Martial Uncle. After Xianxia and Imotienga left, Han Qingyu reached out to hold his hand, but Xiaoyang looked vigilant and kept his hand behind his back. Han Qingyu smiled, then lowered her body and asked, Little brother, what's your name? Xiaoyang stared at her vigilantly for a while before answering. Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang? Don't you have a surname? Han Qingyu was puzzled. Xiaoyang turned his head and watched their backs as they left. He said, My surname is Mo. Han Qingyu was surprised. Xiaoyang turned back and said seriously, Can I say my surname is Mo? Han Qingyu looked at his serious expression and said gently, Of course you can. What surname do you want? You can decide. Xiaoyang finally showed a small smile. His eyes once again followed their backs. Elder sister, you call them martial uncles. Are they very powerful? Of course. They're the grand supreme elders of Xianqing School, the best cultivators in the world. Ah, Xiaoyang said in a daze. Then can I become their disciple? Seeing his serious expression, Han Qingyu stroked his head and said with a smile, Then you have to work hard. Chapter 6:15. You actually came back alive. Lord Daoist Jinghe said, but his tone was gratified. Lord Daoist Jinyang looked at them and said with a smile, After Fengning came back, she said you were surrounded by demonic cultivators. Junior martial brother Jinghe and I were a little worried. Fortunately, you came back safely. Xianxia answered, Senior martial brother Jinyang, thank you for your concern. Although we had some surprises on this trip, we weren't in any danger. Lord Daoist Jinyang smiled. From the looks of it, not only were you not in danger, but you also gained a lot, right? Xianxia smiled. We didn't get anything, but we brought back a piece of news. He told them about his experience in the Eastern Sea, about the 6 Dao palaces and Hu Po's origins, and the shocking news Hu Po told him. After listening to him, Lord Daoist Jinghe and Lord Daoist Jinyang weren't shocked at all. Master, senior martial brother Jinyang, aren't you surprised? Imotienga asked. Lord Daoist Jinghe smiled and looked at her. Girl, did you forget what I told you about the distant past and the Middle Ages? Imotienga was stunned. She recalled that her deepest impression of the distant past and the Middle Ages came from her master's explanation. Lord Daoist Jinghe continued, We old guys have long felt that the end of the distant past and the Middle Ages was very strange. Now that you said that, we understood. Lord Daoist Jinyang nodded. Yes. However, when you said there was a divine beast suppressed in the human world, it still scared us. Unfortunately, this senior has passed away, otherwise, we would have gone to ask for advice. Imotienga said, I didn't talk about the sacrificial temple in detail before. To tell you the truth, my several fated chances are more or less related to the sacrificial temple. Even my natal magic weapon has a deep relationship with the Azure Dragon. She told the two lords Daoist Jinghe in detail about her foundation building, her chance encounter with the Azure Dragon at the sacrificial temple, and her recent encounter with the White Tiger at the sacrificial temple in the far west. They had heard some of these things before, but because it involved fated chances, they didn't ask much. Now that they heard Emotienga from beginning to end, Lord Daoist Xianxia couldn't help but sigh. Everything is predestined. These sacrificial temples have existed for many years, and only a few people know about them, but you ran into them one by one. Now that you've met this senior divine beast and learned the cause and effect, I think this matter is destined to fall on you. Emotienga said, if this matter is related to the destruction of the human world, we'll naturally do our best. However, this is a very important matter. Even a powerful senior who was close to ascending couldn't do it. How can the two of us do it? Lord Daoist Xianxia smiled and waved his hand. It's not the two of you, it's the entire Xianqing school. You have to remember that you're Xianqing school's nascent soul Dao Lord. No matter what happens, Xianqing school will stand behind you. Emotienga also knew about this, but when Lord Daoist Xianxia said it, it had a different meaning. She couldn't help but recall what Qin she said to her just now. She could do anything for the sect, but she could not trust it wholeheartedly. And a long time ago, he had once said that disciples like him, who had grown up in the sect, had different feelings for the sect than she did. She began to reflect on her feelings for the sect. What did she lack in the end? Just like Qin she said, she was willing to do what she could for the sect. If the sect was in trouble, she would stand firmly on the sect's side. No matter how long she wandered outside, she would always want to come back because there were people she cared about here. However, what belonged to the sect wasn't hers. She would only feel at ease if something belonged to her. She seemed to understand a little bit. What she lacked was a sense of security. When she was young, she kept losing things, and she also experienced running away from Yunwu sect. Therefore, it was very hard for her to believe that the sect would support her unconditionally. Let's do it this way. In the end, Lord Daoist Xianxia made his decision. This matter is over. You don't have to stay in Kuanzhong City anymore. From now on, you can only focus on this matter. Emotienga regained her senses and asked, Senior Martial Brother Xianxia, isn't our cultivation level a bit too low? Lord Daoist Xianxia laughed and scolded, Girl, you think you don't have time to cultivate and want to take advantage of the situation, right? Emotienga smiled. Master, don't talk nonsense. The higher my cultivation level, the more confident I'll be in this matter. What Qingwei said also makes sense. Lord Daoist Xianxia stroked his beard and smiled. In my opinion, this matter itself can't be rushed. We're still not sure whether the world is really in chaos, so we have to observe for some time. What Senior Martial Brother Xianxia said makes sense. Qin she nodded in agreement. The current situation is indeed quite difficult, but it's not to the extent that the world is in chaos. At least, the order of the human world hasn't fallen into chaos yet. If we rush to do this matter and don't make sufficient preparations, we'll be the ones to suffer in the end. The other three people couldn't help but nod. Indeed, the speculation about the world being in chaos came from Hupo's mouth, but Hupo had never seen this world with his own eyes. After a moment of contemplation, Lord Daoist Xianxia said, Let's not talk about this matter for the time being so as to avoid disturbing people's hearts. The three people nodded in agreement. Lord Daoist Xianxia continued, Shoujing and Qingwei should return to the mountain and concentrate on cultivating. First, if this matter is true, the two of you should look for the remaining temples. Second, the higher your cultivation levels, the greater your chances of survival. If there comes a day when Xianqing school is forced to get involved, we won't lose our Daoist teachings. Emotienga was shocked. Senior Martial Brother Xianxia. Lord Daoist Xianxia comforted her. This is the worst-case scenario. We don't even know the current situation, so we're far from that point. Emotienga was also aware of this, but Lord Daoist Xianxia's words made her feel moved. Survive and leave behind their Daoist teachings for Xianqing school. She suddenly understood the feeling Qin she was talking about. The school was their biggest reliance and the one they trusted the most. All right. Lord Daoist Xianxia smiled and stood up. The two of you have made great contributions this time. I'll go ask for your rewards later. You should rest first. Senior Martial Brother Xianxia. Qin she called him. There's one more thing I need to tell you. What is it? We killed Fairy Fengqing, Qin she said. What? The two Lord Daoists were surprised. Lord Daoist Jinyang asked anxiously, "Feng Qing is dead?" She nodded. "For some reason she's always been hostile to us. Later, when we gave her some guidance, she really did try to kill us. That being the case, we killed her." Lord Daoist Jinyang sat down again. "Tell me in detail." She then took out the cloak and explained Fairy Feng Qing's actions in detail to him. Lord Daoist Jinghe snorted coldly. Since she wanted to kill us, she should have made the first move to gain the upper hand. Was she supposed to wait until the knife was hanging over her head before she fought back? You did the right thing. Even if you spread the news, you'd still be in the right. Lord Daoist Jinyang's reaction was completely different. He stroked his beard thoughtfully. Logically speaking, Lu Dingyuan should have received the news a long time ago. It seems he deliberately concealed it. Now that Feng Qing was dead, Tiandao sect only had 5 nascent soul cultivators left. Not to mention reclaiming the title of the #1 cultivation group in the celestial pole, Tiandao sect might be overtaken by Gujian sect if they weren't careful. Lu Dingyuan certainly didn't dare to casually announce Feng Qing's death. Besides, on the surface, Feng Qing's death had nothing to do with them. Feng Ning could prove that Fairy Feng Qing left after they took over Bishuan court. After a moment of contemplation, Lord Daoist Jinyang lifted the cloak and said to them, "Shoujing, Qingwei, I'm afraid I can't give you this cloak." Mo Tiange and she naturally didn't object. They had the aura of divine beasts, so this kind of devil magic weapon was useless to them. Senior Marshal Brother will deal with this matter first. You two can do as you please. Lord Daoist Jinyang put the cloak into his Jinkuan bag then left. Seeing Lord Daoist Jinyang leaving the courtyard, Mo Tiange asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang, what do you want to do?" "Make a scene, of course." Lord Daoist Jinghe said lazily, "If they investigate, they'll probably find you. It's better to gain the initiative by striking first so old man Lu can't find trouble with you." Fine, Mo Tiange admitted that this was really a good idea. After walking out of Xianxing School's branch courtyard, Lord Daoist Jinyang adjusted his expression and strode into Wanhe Pagoda in large strides. The disciples guarding Wanhe Pagoda were very surprised. They muttered in their hearts, "Who made this late-stage nascent soul cultivator so angry?" When the disciples greeted him, Lord Daoist Jinyang just grunted casually and went straight to the 6th floor without touching the ground. On the 6th floor of Wanhe Pagoda, there were only 7 people present. 2 nascent soul cultivators with relatively little experience were summarizing the information from each floor. The rest of the people present were either members of the Elder Assembly or the heads of various cultivation groups. When everyone saw Lord Daoist Jinyang, they were about to greet him when they saw a black thing fall on the table. "Brother Jinyang," Feng Xiao had just called out when Lu Dingyuan, who saw what it was, changed his expression. "Lu Dingyuan." Lord Daoist Jinyang gnashed his teeth and stared at him. "Can you explain what this means?" Lu Dingyuan slowly raised his head with a gloomy expression. "I should be the one asking fellow Daoist Jinyang this question, right? Why is Feng Qing's secret treasure in your hands?" "Oomph." Lord Daoist Jinyang snorted. His face was full of impatience. "Are you still pretending? Let me ask you, why didn't Feng Qing return to Tiandao sect after completing her mission but stayed in the Eastern Sea? Why did she attack Shoujing and Qingwei when they weren't prepared?" Lu Dingyuan frowned. "So, Feng Qing was killed by Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei?" Hearing this, the nascent soul cultivators all sucked in a cold breath. Fairy Feng Qing was dead? Didn't that mean Tiandao sect had 1 less nascent soul cultivator? Moreover, it was related to Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei. Lord Daoist Jinyang sneered. She thought she had been in the nascent soul realm for a long time, and she plotted against him, so she would definitely succeed. Unfortunately, she underestimated others too much. Lu Dingyuan raised his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as an arrow, and he said word by word, "Su. Jinyang. Don't go too far." He sneered and said, "Although Feng Qing was impulsive, she wasn't a fool. She was only in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. How could she fight against Qin Shoujing, who was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, and Mo Qingwei was next to him. It's impossible even if you think about it with your brain. I suspect that they killed Feng Qing and reversed right and wrong. How ridiculous! Lord Daoist Jinyang didn't back down at all. As Feng Qing's senior martial brother, don't you know her temperament? She's always jealous of the strong and the talented. In the past, when she saw Miaoyi of our sect, she couldn't wait to look at him with her chin. When she saw Shoujing and Qingwei, how could she speak nicely to them? As he spoke, he turned to Feng Xiao. Fellow Daoist Feng, have you ever heard Feng Ning talk about Feng Qing's attitude towards them? Feng Xiao's eyes flickered, and he said flatly, Feng Ning did say that fellow Daoist Feng Qing didn't handle things well, but it shouldn't be so serious as to kill someone, Fellow Daoist Jinyang continued to sneer at Lu Dingyuan. It's impossible under normal circumstances, but it's hard to say when it comes to Feng Qing. He pointed at the cloak on the table. Her state of mind has long been distorted by cultivating demonic techniques. Chapter 616. After talking with Lord Daoist Jinghe for a while, Wanhe Tower sent them a message, asking them to go. Lord Daoist Jinghe immediately stood up. Let's go watch the show. Mo Tiange was speechless. Master. So they were going to put on an act? Lord Daoist Jinghe said, why wouldn't we go watch the show? That old bastard Lu Dingyuan has been arrogant for 1,000 years. I've long been annoyed by him. Now that I finally have a chance to see him make a fool of himself, I must go. Mo Tiange thought, Master, you're much more arrogant than him. Although Lu Dingyuan also cultivates devil arts, he has a stable mentality because of his identity. Usually, he only uses his power to oppress people. Who told Tiandao sect to be so powerful? Qin, she said, if I don't let Master go, how can he sit still? Yes, the three of us will go together. We'll make Lu Dingyuan so angry that he vomits blood. Lord Daoist Jinghe announced arrogantly, then led his 2 treasured disciples to attack the Wanhe Tower. The process couldn't be described in detail. In short, the 2 of them and Lord Daoist Jinyang successfully angered Lu Dingyuan until his devil aura surged and he almost couldn't control his emotions and started fighting. Then Lord Daoist speechless and Daoist Ji rushed over and confronted them. Xianqing School and Tiandao sect started fighting. This news spread among the high-level cultivators in Kuanzhong City in less than a day. For a while, people's hearts were shaken and restless. There were 7 late-stage nascent soul cultivators in the Celestial Pole. Excluding Master Song Feng, who either disappeared or went on a killing spree, there were still 6 left. The 2 great sects each had 2 of them. If they really started fighting, it would be the same as turning the world upside down. At that time, it would be good enough to survive the turmoil caused by the fight between the 4 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, not to mention resisting the devil path and beast cultivators. The calmest ones were the disciples of Gujian sect and Danding School because their heads were great late-stage nascent soul cultivators. From this point of view, the effect of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator on a cultivation sect was immeasurable. It wasn't as simple as having great strength. Because of this, the nascent soul cultivators who stayed in Kuanzhong City reached a consensus. They hastily sent a message to the other 2 nascent soul cultivators, as well as Biyun sects Ding Wan, Spirit Beast sects Hua Lingyun, and other famous figures among the nascent soul cultivators to mediate. At this moment, Householder Heaven Herb was overseeing the demonic cultivator forest while Venerable Swordsman Yuan Ying was guarding Demonic Mountain. When the 2 of them received the message, they turned pale with fright and immediately rushed back to Kuanzhong City. Householder Heaven Herb arrived first. Since Kuanzhong City was close to the demonic cultivator forest, he arrived in less than half a day. Originally, Venerable Swordsman Yuan Ying wouldn't have been able to get there so quickly. The distance from Demonic Mountain to Kuanzhong City was more than half of Kunwo. Even if he used his wind feather sword as if his life depended on it, it would still take him 3 to 4 days to get there. Fortunately, after establishing contact with Yunzhong, the Celestial Pole also built a long-distance transmission array. Although it wouldn't be used under normal circumstances, this was obviously a special case. Venerable Swordsman Yuan Ying immediately activated the transmission array and returned to Kuanzhong City. Venerable swordsman Yuanying, householder Heaven Herb, Ding Luan, Hualingyun, and even Lord Daoist Wuxia of Xianxia sect, who usually didn't show up, also hurried over. For a time, all the nascent soul cultivators with a bit of reputation in the celestial pole rushed to Kuanzhong City like a swarm of bees. Fortunately, the war was stable now, and nascent soul cultivators were only overseeing things. Otherwise, the Immortal Alliance's line of defense would have completely collapsed. Mo Tiange knew it would be very troublesome to deal with the aftermath of killing Fairy Fengqing, but she still underestimated the extent of the trouble. Almost the entire celestial pole was running around for this matter. Perhaps Fairy Fengqing also didn't expect that she, who was only an ordinary nascent soul cultivator when she was alive, would cause such a big storm after her death. Xianxia School and Tiandao sect had been confronting each other in Wanhe Pagoda for 2 days. During these 2 days, aside from Lu Dequan, who was guarding the gate, Daoist Haifeng, the only remaining nascent soul cultivator of Tiandao sect, also came to Kuanzhong City. As for Xianxia School, Miaoyi and Xianin were on their way. The two sides were still confronting each other. Although the cultivators of the two groups had some good personal relations, this matter was related to the rise and fall of their sects, so they could only put their personal relations aside and put the interests of their sects first. 6 against 4, Xianxia School obviously had the upper hand. This was also what Lu Dingyuan hated the most. Originally, Tiandao sect and Xianxia School's nascent soul cultivators were 7 against 5, and they even had a cultivator in the late nascent soul stage, so they had the upper hand. However, in the past 200 years, Tiandao sect's luck wasn't good, so it became 5 against 8. If it weren't for him and Bayan, who could still hold on for several hundred years, Tiandao sect would have most likely fallen. Thinking of this, Lu Dingyuan hated them even more. Although Fengqing's strength wasn't good, her existence at least made the number of nascent soul cultivators in Tiandao sect look better. The significance of her death wasn't because of the strength she represented, but because of the number she represented. The death of nascent soul cultivators one by one seemed to indicate that Tiandao sect's inevitable decline had arrived. This cast a shadow in Lu Dingyuan's heart that was difficult to get rid of. He really couldn't tolerate Tiandao sect falling into his hands. This was the situation when venerable swordsman Yuanying arrived. At the long table in the middle, Xianxia School and Tiandao sect were sitting on one side, facing each other. The nascent soul cultivators were sitting casually on the side. Among these people, he saw Lord Daoist Wuxia, Ding Luan, Feng Shao, Hualingyun, householder Heaven Herb. Putting aside the others, they more or less had personal relationships with the cultivators of the two great sects, so they were slightly biased. Householder Heaven Herb looked calm as if he didn't want to get involved at all. Venerable swordsman Yuanying understood his thoughts. Danding School was almost cut off because the 6 great sects delayed the rescue. Although there wasn't any deep hatred between them, he would definitely be happy to watch a good show if the 6 great sects could fight each other. Therefore, it was impossible to count on householder Heaven Herb to resolve the hatred between the two great sections. Therefore, he still had to take the field. Venerable swordsman Yuanying's face was expressionless, but he felt a bit helpless inside. He was the most impatient with worldly affairs, otherwise Gujian's sect wouldn't have appointed another deacon grand supreme elder. Unfortunately, all these things fell on his head now. Fellow Daoists. He walked forward and said, "If there's anything, there's no harm in discussing it. Your two great sects are the pillars of the Immortal Alliance and are related to the Alliance's prosperity and decline. It's not good for you to be at daggers drawn." Although his tone was cold, his meaning was still conveyed very clearly. Upon seeing him, the expressions on both sides eased up. Among nascent soul cultivators, venerable swordsman Yuanying was a peculiar existence. He wasn't like Lu Dingyuan and Lord Daoist Zhenyang, who were astute and tactful. He also wasn't like Ding Luan and Feng Shao, who had a lot of friends. He didn't care about anything else and only cared about his sword, but no one dared to look down on him. He had almost no friends, but everyone respected him. Because he didn't fight and because he didn't care, he was actually the most upright person. According to rumors, venerable swordsman Yuanying had been self-disciplined all his life and had never done anything biased. He wouldn't be partial even to his own disciples. No one had ever objected to what he said. In short, Venerable Swordsman Yuaning's character was like a shining signboard in the celestial pole. Almost everyone believed he would stand on the most just side. Lu Dingyuan's anger hadn't subsided yet, so he said stiffly, "Fellow Daoist Yuaning, it's good that you're here. I hope Xianxia School can give us an explanation about this matter." Before Venerable Swordsman Yuaning could speak, Lord Daoist Jinyang already said angrily, "How ridiculous! It's clearly me who wants an explanation from you. When did it become us giving you an explanation?" "Su Jinyang, do you want to be the one to complain?" Lord Daoist Jinyang retorted sarcastically, "I thought you were covered in dirt and wouldn't be able to wash yourself clean even if you were thrown into the Eastern Sea. Do you think you're a good person?" You too." Venerable Swordsman Yuaning spoke. His voice was still cold, but he successfully stopped the two great late nascent soul cultivators and the leaders of the two great sects from arguing. He said, "If you keep arguing, you won't solve anything except for wasting time." The two of them were silent for a while, then said in unison, "What do you think we should do?" Venerable Swordsman Yuaning looked up and swept his gaze over the two silent people. He said, "If you accept my mediation, each of you tell me what happened." Lord Daoist Jinyang and Lu Dingyuan glared at each other, then both agreed. Lord Daoist Jinyang knew when to stop. He struck first to gain the upper hand, so he could speak in a reasonable manner. As for Lu Dingyuan, although he was furious, he wasn't a fool. Since Fengqing was dead and Tiandao sect insisted on opposing Xianxia School, it wouldn't benefit Tiandao sect at all. It would be better for them to resolve this grudge under Venerable Swordsman Yuaning's mediation for the time being and train their troops for further development. However, Tiandao sect's face had to be preserved, so Su Jinyang shouldn't try to invert right and wrong. Venerable Swordsman Yuaning's gaze shifted between the two of them and said, "Since Fengqing was killed, fellow Daoist Lu, please speak first." Lu Dingyuan nodded and said, "Fellow Daoists all know that Tiandao sect has few talented people now. For the sake of the Immortal Alliance, Junior Marshal Brother Bayan and I have been stationed here for a long time, leaving only Lu Dequan and Fengqing in the sect. Not long ago, the Eastern Sea changed and beast cultivators invaded. Bishuan Court came to Tiandao sect for help, so Fengqing went to Bishuan Court." He paused for a moment and continued to say, "As you all know, Xianxia School's Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei accepted the task to take over Fengqing's position and guard Bishuan Court. The strange thing is that after they took over the task, Fengqing never came back, and we also didn't receive any news until a few days ago, when Fengqing's natal lamp suddenly extinguished in the sect." Venerable Swordsman Yuaning nodded slowly. "Then what's fellow Daoist Lu's opinion on this matter?" Lu Dingyuan took a deep breath and said, "Before Su Jinyang came, I didn't have any opinion. I just wanted to send someone to the Eastern Sea to see what happened to Fengqing when I had some free time." Venerable Swordsman Yuaning turned to Lord Daoist Jinyang. "Fellow Daoist Jinyang, what about you?" Lord Daoist Jinyang perfectly maintained his unhappy expression. He said, "Now, we didn't know about Fengqing's matter before. 2 days ago, Shoujing and Qingwei came back and said that because the beast cultivators attacked Bishuan Court, they lingered in the Eastern Sea but ran into Fengqing, who left a long time ago. I don't know why Fengqing didn't go back. After she ran into them, she became even more jealous, so she tried to sneak attack them, but her skills were inferior and she was killed instead." Right after Lord Daoist Jinyang finished speaking, Lu Dingyuan snorted coldly. "Nonsense. How could Fengqing sneak attack them?" Lu Dingyuan, "Fellow Daoists." Venerable Swordsman Yuaning shouted. Seeing that the two of them didn't say anything else, he said, "Since this matter fell on fellow Daoists Shoujing and Qingwei, please explain it to us." Qin Shi nodded at Emotienga, then said loudly, "Senior Yuaning, let me explain." Chapter 617. Qin Shi omitted the beginning and the end of what happened in the Eastern Sea. Apart from his experiences in the Six Paths Palace, he basically told her everything. According to him, Fairy Fengqing had lingered in the East Sea for an ulterior motive. After meeting them, she became even more suspicious and jealous of them. In the end, she secretly attacked them and wanted to kill them both. Once he finished speaking, he handed over the wreckage of the destroyed 10,000 miles canoe. From the spiritual aura fluctuations left on it, it was easy to tell that it was indeed Feng Qing's handiwork. Once Qin finished speaking, the 6th floor of Wangquan Pagoda fell into silence. Although Feng Qing's action was very stupid, she was famous for her bad temper. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the title of female Rakshasa. It wasn't strange for her to do such a thing. Lu Dingyuan was furious. Nonsense. No matter how stupid Feng Qing was, she would not fight 1 against 2 and attack the strong with the weak. I feel that all of you covet Feng Qing's fortuitous encounter, and that's why you're waiting for an opportunity to kill her and seize her treasure. Lord Daoist Xianxia snorted and pointed at the black cloak on the table. Then what about this thing? Venerable Sword Yuanying did not express his opinion immediately. Instead, he picked up the cloak and examined it carefully. He said, "I've heard of this before. It's called the revolving devil cloak. It should have a set of devil art that goes with it. It's not easy to cultivate this demonic technique. The slightest mistake will cause one's personality to change drastically." "Old Lu, did you hear that?" Lord Daoist Jinghe, who had been sitting and watching the show, lazily said, "Don't say Feng Qing wouldn't be that stupid. The facts prove that she's that stupid. This is just speculation." Lu Dingyuan's face and neck turned red. He barely suppressed his anger and turned to Venerable Swordsman Yuanying. "Daoist Yuanying, say something." Honorable Swordsman Yuanying sighed. "That's right, it's just a guess." Things were back to square one. There was material evidence that Feng Qing's temperament changed greatly because of the devil art, but this material evidence wasn't particularly strong. Qin Shi and Mo Tiange killing people and seizing their treasures. Although there was no evidence, it was the most reasonable speculation. Both sides had their own opinions, and there was no way to distinguish between them. After a while, Venerable Swordsman Yuanying said faintly, "I have an idea, but I don't know if you will agree." Lord Daoist Xianxia softened his tone. "Fellow Daoist Yuanying, please go ahead." Venerated Swordsman Yuanying said, "In the cultivation world, there are 2 kinds of dermic arts that can prevent people from lying. One of them was the soul-searching technique. This technique was quite simple, but it had many limitations, and the target would suffer great damage. The other type is the dream-leading technique. The dream-leading technique uses dreams as a guide to make people lower their guard and answer any questions without any negative consequences." He looked at Qin Shi and Mo Tiange. "Are the 2 of you willing to take the dream-leading techniques test?" Upon hearing what he said, Lord Daoist Xianxia and Lu Dingyuan both looked astonished. Lord Daoist Jinghe asked in surprise, "Old man Yuanying, you actually know the dream-leading technique?" The soul-searching technique had been passed down until now, but not many people knew about the dream-leading technique, and even fewer people knew how to use it. Venerable Swordsman Yuanying said lightly, "A little." "All right." Lu Dingyuan immediately agreed and turned to look at them. "If you don't dare, then you have a guilty conscience." Qin Shi and Mo Tiange looked at each other and smiled. "What we said isn't empty talk. There's nothing to be afraid of. Fellow Daoist Xianxia?" Venerable Swordsman Yuanying turned to Lord Daoist Xianxia. Seeing that the 2 of them looked relaxed, Lord Daoist Xianxia naturally didn't object. "Thank you." Venerable Swordsman Yuanying nodded and said to Mo Tiange and Qin Shi, "The 2 of you withdraw your divine senses and relax your sea of knowledge. Don't resist." With so many nascent soul cultivators staring at them, asking them to relax their sea of knowledge was indeed a bit difficult. However, they also knew that if they didn't relax their sea of knowledge and accept the dream-leading technique, they would feel very uncomfortable. Lord Daoist Jinghe said in a low voice, "Master's here, so you only need to worry. If someone tries to harm you, Master and Senior Martial Brother Xianxia will definitely risk our lives to protect you." With Lord Daoist Jinghe's words, the 2 of them felt very relieved. Right after they closed their eyes and relaxed their sea of knowledge, Venerable Swordsman Yuanying stretched out his hand and slowly condensed a ball of light in his palm. When the ball of light condensed to the size of a fist, he gave it a light push. The ball of light split into two and enveloped them. In an instant, Emotienga felt as if the people and things around her were far away from her. She entered a kind of wonderful feeling, relaxed, happy, and without any burden. In her daze, she seemed to have been asked some questions. She didn't pause at all and answered intuitively. After a long time, they heard Venerable Swordsman Yuanying's indifferent but clear voice. Everything has been asked. Withdraw. The ball of light withdrew from the two of them and Venerable Swordsman Yuanying's gaze swept over Lu Dingyuan. Are there any other questions? Emotienga didn't know what she just said, so she looked at Lord Daoist Jinghe. Lord Daoist Jinghe chuckled and gave them a thumbs up. The two of them felt relieved. It was a fact that Feng Qing made the first move. As long as Venerable Swordsman Yuanying didn't ask anything else, it didn't matter. Lu Dingyuan's face was ashen. After struggling for a long time, he said, the two of them already knew Feng Qing's mood wasn't right, so why did they still provoke her on purpose? This goes against the principle of watching and helping each other. Lord Daoist Jinyang said, she has evil intentions towards others, but she still wants others to watch and help her? As it turns out, Tiandao sect's rules are supposed to be obeyed by others. Lu Dingyuan's expression was extremely unsightly. He never expected it to be Feng Qing who made the first move. Feng Qing wasn't such a stupid person. After thinking it over, he figured Feng Qing probably made a mistake in her cultivation, but he didn't notice it. Tiandao sect's face had already been lost, but he had to argue for what was right. He turned to Venerable Swordsman Yuanying and said, Fellow Daoist Yuanying, what do you think? Venerable Swordsman Yuanying's face, which was as handsome as a youth, remained calm. He said, Shoujing and Qingwei's actions were indeed somewhat inappropriate. If this happened before, Venerable Swordsman Yuanying wouldn't have said a word. But now that the Celestial Pole sect had established the Celestial Pole Immortal Alliance, everyone should be regarded as fellow disciples regardless of their identities. If it were someone else, they'd probably do the same as Emotienga and Emotienga. Lord Daoist Jinyang snorted but didn't say anything. Venerable Swordsman Yuanying said, all right, things are clear now. This matter isn't Shoujing and Qingwei's fault, so Tiandao sect can't trouble them anymore. Upon hearing what she said, several people from Tiandao sect looked extremely gloomy, but they all agreed with Venerable Swordsman Yuanying's mediation. Since the matter was in front of them, they couldn't say anything now. Venerable Swordsman Yuanying continued, however, the two of them saw that Feng Qing was trapped in a demonic barrier, yet they didn't help her. Their actions went against justice. He paused for a moment. Since no one said anything, he continued, since that's the case, Xianxia School should compensate Tiandao sect. Many people present heaved sighs of relief, but they also felt regretful in their hearts. In the end, they couldn't fight. Since the two great sects didn't object, this was practically the best result. Lu Dingyuan knew that since Feng Qing attacked first, they wouldn't be able to get any justice from Xianxia School. Lord Daoist Jinyang also understood that it was impossible for Tiandao sect to not pay anything for the loss of a nascent soul cultivator. Therefore, both sides tacitly agreed to this result. Since the result was out, all the nascent soul cultivators left Wanhe Pagoda with either peace of mind or regret, leaving behind only the two great sects and their leaders. Next was the main event, the issue of compensation. A nascent soul cultivator meant a lot to a sect, so Lu Dingyuan used this point to demand an exorbitant price. Lord Daoist Jinyang naturally didn't agree. They only acted inappropriately in this matter, so they didn't need to take responsibility. Compensation was just a gesture. The two of them began to engage in a war of words and haggle, calculating every spirit stone clearly. How were they great late nascent soul cultivators? They were clearly small peddlers in market squares. Under the witness of the leaders of various sects, the two sides finally reached an agreement and erased this matter. When they returned to Xianxia School's branch courtyard, Lord Daoist Jinyang wiped his face and said, that old bastard Lu Dingyuan, sooner or later, I'll make him spit out what he took today. Although more than half of it was cut off, it was still not a small amount. Emotienga pondered for a moment then said, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, I have some spiritual plants that can make up for part of it. Lord Daoist Xianxia waved his hand. High-aged spiritual plants are hard to come by, so you'd better keep them for concocting medicinal pills. The sect can still afford these things. He then smiled and said, Qingwei, you're still treating me like an outsider. You're sect disciples, so if something happens, the sect will naturally take care of it for you. Besides, this matter isn't your fault. Tiange was stunned and seemed to be lost in thought. So this was the difference between her and Qin Shi? While she was lost in thought, Lord Daoist Xianxia's expression became serious. You two should go back to Mount Taikong. Time is pressing. I'll let our disciples pay attention to what Senior Hupa said. You just need to focus on cultivating. Senior Martial Brother Xianxiang, then this place, Miaoyi and Xianyin are already here. Lord Daoist Jinghe waved his hand. You two can go. By the way, tell Lingxi that he'd better also enter closed-door meditation. The three of you are Xianqing School's hope. Tiange looked up at Qin Shi. Seeing his solemn expression, she somewhat understood that her master and Lord Daoist Xianxiang had already made a decision. If the world was really in chaos and the world was changed, the whole Xianqing School would strive to preserve their lives and let them pass on their Daoist teachings for Xianqing School. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart, but in the end, she just answered softly, yes. After Lord Daoist Xianxiang and Lord Daoist Jinghe made their decision, Tiange and Qin Shi set foot on the road back to Mount Taikong on the same day. Not long after they left, Xianyin and Miaoyi arrived. The four Lord Daoists didn't go to Wanhe Pagoda. Instead, they holed up in Xianqing School's branch courtyard, closed the door, and set up restrictions to discuss matters. The next day, Luo Fengxue, the head of Mount Taikong, received a letter. The content wasn't long, but she read it all night. Soon after, Xianqing School issued an order to recall a group of disciples. Later, batches of disciples were sent out one after another, but they didn't go to the battlefield. Instead, they wandered around the whole celestial pole for unknown reasons. Only a few people in the whole Xianqing School knew about these changes. Tiange, Qin Shi, and Lord Daoist Lingxi all entered closed-door meditation at the same time. After Lord Daoist Huayan went to Kuanzhong City and returned to Mount Taikong, he didn't return to his Immortal's cave. Instead, he guarded the Hall of Three Pure on the main peak every day. Tiange knew he didn't have much time left. His cultivation level had been stuck in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, so it was basically impossible for him to advance. Therefore, he planned to contribute his last strength to the sect, to protect them in closed-door meditation. With this thought in mind, Tiange took out a medicine bottle from her Qiankuan ring. The medicinal pills in this medicine bottle were called longevity pills. One pill could prolong one's life by 500 years. Chapter 6:18. Senior Martial Brother, do you think I should take the longevity pills out? She asked while stroking the medicine bottle in her hand. Qin Shi, who was rummaging through ancient books, answered after a while, you can take them if you want. Tiange turned her head and rolled her eyes at him. How can you be so casual? Qin Shi said helplessly, this is something you have the right to decide. Why do I need to tell you? But not to mention how rare longevity pills are, other people's pills can only prolong their lives by 100 years, but mine can prolong their lives by 500 years. How do you explain this? Tiange was confused. She wasn't stingy with these things, but it was hard to explain the source. Qin Shi said, they won't force you to explain. What are you worried about? Fine, she admitted that this was related to the sect. What she lacked was Qin Shi's calmness. She thought for a while then asked, do you think I should take out the spiritual plants and medicinal pills at this critical moment? When they were organizing the virtual sky world, they picked a batch of spiritual plants. Most of them were refined into medicinal pills and a small part was stored. There were so many of them that they couldn't use them all. Qin Shi thought for a while then answered, you can. They're especially useful now. The sect's strength is in urgent need of improvement. Tiange asked again, how much should we take out? Qin Shi thought about the number of medicinal pills she had and said, half. When they were trapped on Demonic Mountain, they had nothing to do but concoct medicinal pills every day. The medicinal pills they saved could scare people to death. Although the total amount couldn't compare to the sect's storehouse, they had a lot more high-level medicinal pills, and their quality was also much better. The two of them claimed to be in closed-door meditation, but in fact, they both had important things to do. She was looking for records about changing the world. Unfortunately, with the end of every era, a large number of ancient books disappeared, so it was difficult to find a few words about that period of history. The virtual sky world was probably created before the Middle Ages era, so there was no such content in the ancient books. For this reason, Luo Fengxue sent out a large number of disciples to search for books and jade slips on various aspects. As for Mo Tiange, she was pondering the relationship between several cultivation techniques. Her Sunu art of the origin, Qin Shi's pure yang technique and art of 3 primordial cycles, as well as the yin and yang dual cultivation technique Yuan Bao gave them all had more or less problems. Some of them were suitable for the virtual sky world, while some weren't. They had to solve these problems before they could cultivate at a rapid pace with the help of their constitutions. Thinking of medicinal pills, Mo Tiange summoned Shui Linbo and asked her to call Luo Fengxue over. She gradually adapted to her new identity and also learned to put on the airs of a nascent soul lord. This was the air that a nascent soul lord must have, and it was also a kind of motivation for the disciples of the sect. Luo Fengxue rode on the machine-operated eagle, flying towards the extreme abyss pool. After Qin Shi advanced to the nascent soul realm, he sealed the exit of his Immortal's cave, which was originally located on a mountaintop, and opened another exit in Extreme Abyss Valley. Right now, the entire Extreme Abyss Valley was within the range of the Immortal's cave's restrictions. If they wanted to enter the valley, they had to ride Mo Tiange's special machine-operated eagle. Looking down from the sky above the Extreme Abyss Valley, most of the valley floor was covered by the Extreme Abyss Pool. The water was as clear as a mirror, and the waves were rippling. Being at the bottom of the valley, there was another kind of scenery. The most eye-catching thing was the waterfall that flowed down like white silk. The sound of water splashing could be heard, and pearls splashed. On the surface of the water, there were ice flows everywhere, looking like glaciers. In one corner of the pool, there were several wooden houses connected by winding corridors. Both houses were covered with green vines, looking quite wild. The open space where the wooden houses were located was full of exotic flowers and plants, and in the snow and ice, one could see a proud and unyielding character. At a glance, Luo Fengxue knew it was the masterpiece of Mo Tiange's registered disciple. They had known each other for more than 100 years, so she knew this youngest nascent soul cultivator in the celestial pole too well. If Luo Fengxue had asked her to decorate her own Immortal's cave, she could have just built 2 wooden houses at random. How could it be as elegant as it was now? However, this was the style of a nascent soul cultivator's Immortal's cave. Martial Uncle Shoujing's Immortal's cave was originally built on an uninhabited mountaintop. Forget it, let's not talk about it. Luo Fengxue came down from the machine-operated eagle. Shui Linbo was already waiting beside her. She bowed and said, "Greetings, sect head." Luo Fengxue smiled and said, "No need to be so polite." Now that Shui Linbo was Mo Tiange's disciple, she was the same as her in terms of seniority. However, Shui Linbo was both a core formation cultivator and the sect head, so her status was much higher. Shui Linbo looked calm, neither servile nor overbearing. "Auntie is already waiting for sect head. Sect head, please come with me." Luo Fengxue nodded. "Thank you." Shui Linbo took Luo Fengxue into the cave on the rock wall and walked all the way to the hall. "Auntie, sect head Bingxin is here." Mo Tiange was studying a cultivation technique. Upon hearing the voice, she stopped and nodded. "I see." Then she smiled at Luo Fengxue and said, "Fengxue, sit down." "Thank you, Martial Uncle Qingwei." Luo Fengxue bowed solemnly and then sat at the last seat. Up until now, the two of them had been well-mannered and hadn't violated the etiquette in the slightest. When Luo Fengxue sat down, they looked at each other for a while and couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Not bad this time. You finally look like a nascent soul cultivator," Luo Fengxue said. Mo Tiange said helplessly, "Isn't it easy to put on airs? It just depends on who I'm dealing with." "So, I'm someone who doesn't need to put on airs? I'm so honored." Luo Fengxue pretended to cup her hands. Mo Tiange smiled and said, "I called you here today because I have something to tell you." Her attitude was kind and she was smiling. Her speech and mannerisms had the demeanor of a high-level cultivator. Luo Fengxue couldn't help but think of the little cultivator who followed martial uncle Shoujing to Xianxia school and sighed inwardly. "Martial uncle, what can I do for you?" Mo Tiange took out a Qiankuan bag from her robe and handed it to her. "We're in troubled times now. Master and senior martial brothers are all running around for the sect, but we can't help them. There are some medicinal pills and spiritual plants in here that we've accumulated in our daily lives. Just take it as doing something for the sect." Luo Fengxue knew they were both good at pill concocting, so she accepted the bag and said, "In fact, you've helped the sect a lot. Your spiritual beast, Feifei, brought back many clansmen last time. These Feifeis are very sensitive to treasures. With them, the chances of finding treasures are very high." Mo Tiange smiled bitterly. "Do you think I don't know that guy? He's never willing to suffer losses, and he doesn't let his clansmen recognize him as their master. I'm afraid he wants a lot in return." Luo Fengxue pursed her lips and smiled. The cost is indeed higher than the spiritual beasts that recognize them as masters, but without them, where would those treasures come from? To tell you the truth, this time, I received Martial Uncle Xinyang's order and sent a group of disciples to look for treasures with Feifei. These things will be used to tide over this crisis. If Xianxia school can safely tide over this crisis, these Feifei will take great credit. It's good that you don't have to raise them for free." The two of them chatted for a while before Luo Fengxue took her leave. Luo Fengxue rode the machine-operated eagle out of Extreme Abyss Valley and rode her sword back to the main peak's main hall. She then opened her Qiankuan bag and poured out the medicinal pills and spiritual plants. She was stunned by the fall. The medicinal pills and spiritual plants poured out of the Qiankuan bag could pile up into a small mountain, and there was still more. Among them, there were several hundred jade boxes for spiritual plants and countless jade bottles for medicinal pills. Luo Fengxue was stunned for a while. She then put her hand into her Qiankuan bag and muttered to herself, "There are so many medicinal pills. Even the bottles must cost a lot, right?" These jade bottles were exquisite and made of high-quality spiritual jades. They were worth a lot of spirit stones alone. Luo Fengxue grabbed a jade bottle and opened the cork. Instantly, the room was filled with fragrance. She poured out a pill and was even more shocked. Extreme Purity Pill. This was a top-grade spiritual pill that could help core formation. She then opened several jade bottles. In addition to Extreme Purity pills, there were also Clear Sky pills, Dew of Immortality, and even nascent soul-level Extreme Purity Golden pills and 9 Transformations Yang Restoration pills. Luo Fengxue felt a bit suffocated. Even Xianxia School's storehouse didn't have so many high-grade medicinal pills. She then randomly took a jade box with a high-grade talisman on it to prevent spiritual aura loss. Next to the talisman was a line of small words, "Purple Origin Spirit Grass, 8,000 years old." She then looked at the other jade boxes. They were all precious spiritual plants, all of which were more than 5,000 years old, and some of them were even 10,000 years old. Luo Fengxue wiped her sweat. After thinking for a while, she stuffed all the jade bottles and jade boxes back into her Qiankuan bag, left the sect head hall, and walked to the front of the Hall of the Three Pure Ones. Lord Daoist Huayan was drawing talismans. For him, it didn't matter if he cultivated or not. While he still had more than 200 years to live, he should quickly make use of his remaining energy and arrange a good future for his disciples. Therefore, after hearing the news brought by Mo Tiange and Luo Fengxue, he asked to return to the mountain to guard the Hall of the Three Pure Ones to protect the 3 most promising nascent soul cultivators of Xianxia School in their closed-door meditation. When Luo Fengxue came, he only paid a little attention to her. "Oh, Fengxue. What's the matter?" "Martial Uncle Huayan." After greeting him, Luo Fengxue didn't have time to be polite and presented the Qiankuan bag to him. Just now, Martial Uncle Qingwei called me over and said I would give these things to the sect. Oh? What is it that even you can't decide? Lord Daoist Huayan's brush moved like dragons and snakes. As the talisman brush moved, the handwriting on the talisman paper emitted a faint spiritual light. Martial Uncle, you'll understand when you see it. After drawing a talisman, Lord Daoist Huayan put down the talisman brush and took the Qingkuan bag. He put his hand into the Qingkuan bag, took out a jade bottle, opened it, sniffed it, and said, "High-grade aura refining pills. Good stuff." Then he turned to Luo Fengxue and asked, "Is this all?" Luo Fengxue said, "Look at how many there are, and you'll know why I came to ask." Hearing this, Lord Daoist Huayan thought that even if there were a few more, it wouldn't be strange. After all, those two people had deep-fated chances. Then he was stunned. He just tipped the Qingkuan bag casually, and a pile of things fell out with a clatter. Lord Daoist Huayan touched the Qingkuan bag and simply emptied it all out. He exclaimed, "These two little guys are too lucky. Where did they get so many spiritual plants? They can actually concoct so many medicinal pills." Luo Fengxue said next to him, "Martial Uncle Huayan, take a look at those spiritual plants first." Lord Daoist Huayan glanced at her suspiciously, then picked up a jade box with the words, "Phoenix Crown Grass, 9,000 years old." He was stunned, then hurriedly took off the talisman on it. Sure enough, there was a 9,000 years old phoenix crown grass inside. After a long time, he closed the jade box, stuck the talisman on it, and said to Luo Fengxue, "Fengxue, leave these things with me. If there's no problem, I'll give them to you." Luo Fengxue said without hesitation, "Yes, Martial Uncle." Chapter 619. An hour later, the Qingkuan bag that had just been given away was back in her hands. Tiange pointed to the Qingkuan bag on the table and asked, "Senior Brother Huayan, why did you take it back?" Lord Daoist Huayan asked, "Qingwei, did you really give these things to the sect?" Tiange nodded. "Of course not." Lord Daoist Huayan asked, "Do you know the value of these things?" "Of course I do. The medicinal pills inside were refined by me and Senior Brother Shoujing. Now that you put it that way, I understand." Lord Daoist Huayan put away the Qingkuan bag again. "These things are too important for the sect. I have to go to Kuanzhong City again." Tiange understood. "Senior Brother, go ahead. With us here, the sect will be fine." She took out a wooden box from a secret compartment on the table and said, "Senior Brother Huayan, there are some precious medicinal pills and spiritual herbs here. It's not appropriate to give them to Fengxue directly. You take them with you and ask Senior Brother Xianxia how to deal with them. Or you can share them directly." Lord Daoist Huayan couldn't think of anything more precious than the heavenly golden pill, and the 9 transformations yang restoration pill were in the Qingkuan bag. Seeing that Tiange pushed the wooden box over and motioned for him to open it, he didn't refuse. There were still jade bottles and boxes in the wooden box. This time, there were more than 20 jade boxes and only 4 or 5 jade bottles. Lord Daoist Huayan saw the words, 100 fruits, 10,000 years, on the top jade box, and his expression immediately became solemn. Those 10,000 years spiritual herbs are common species. These are the precious spiritual herbs. He heard Tiange's explanation. Lord Daoist Huayan nodded slightly. He didn't open it but looked at the jade bottles. He picked up a jade bottle and pulled out the cork. A faint fragrance slowly floated out. "This is..." Smelling the fragrance, Lord Daoist Huayan was stunned and then excited. "Is this the longevity pill?" The longevity pill was very precious because it contained an extremely precious spiritual herb, which usually appeared only once in 100 years. Once it appeared, it would cause a scramble. Those who got the spiritual herb might not necessarily use it to refine the longevity pill. Therefore, the longevity pill rarely appeared in the world and could only be found by chance. Tiange was surprised. "Senior Brother, you know? Could it be that he has already taken the longevity pill?" Lord Daoist Huayan shook his head. "I was lucky enough to see the auction of the longevity pill when I was in the core formation stage. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money at that time, and I could only watch it fall into the hands of others. Later, I formed my nascent soul and never saw it again. He stared at Imo Tiange. Qingwei, I won't hide it from you, I urgently need this pill, so I won't be polite with you. When I come back from Kuanzhong City, I definitely won't let you suffer any losses. Imo Tiange waved her hand and said, Senior Martial Brother Hua Yan, the sect is now going through a difficult time together. Senior Brother should be able to see that we don't lack these things. If we're talking about repayment, no matter how many treasures Senior Brother brings, we won't be able to use them. It's not as practical as Senior Brother advancing to the mid-stage. Advancing to the middle stage would increase the strength of the sect and also increase the possibility of them surviving this tribulation. Lord Daoist Huayan understood what she meant and felt it was reasonable, so he said, In that case, I won't be unreasonable. He put away the wooden box and said nothing more. He went back to the main peak to give some instructions and then set off for Kuanzhong City again. Watching Lord Daoist Huayan leave, Imo Tiange thought she had to build a teleportation formation between Mount Taikang and Kuanzhong City as soon as possible. It was too troublesome to run back and forth like this. She went back to her cave and asked Shui Linbo to find suitable candidates to learn the teleportation formation. Shui Linbo had always done things quickly. She immediately went to the sect head's hall on the main peak and told Luo Fengxue about this matter. Then, accompanied by Luo Fengxue, she gathered all the remaining formation masters in the sect and finally selected 2 people. Upon learning that they were going to learn formations from Dao Lord Primrose, the 2 of them were incredibly excited. Everyone in Xianxing School knew that among the Lord Daoists, Zhenyang was good at refining tools, Shoujing was good at concocting pills, Huayan was good at making talismans, and Qingwei was good at formations. Compared with the other 3 miscellaneous studies, formations were the least studied, and there were even fewer who could be called formation masters. Probably because the other 3 miscellaneous studies were closely related to cultivation and fights of magical powers, but formations weren't directly related. Usually buying 1 or 2 sets was enough, and there was no need to learn them by themselves. In this case, most formation masters had to rely on self-study and talent. Now that they had this opportunity to ask Lord Daoist Qingwei about formations, how could they not be excited? Shui Linbo took the 2 disciples back to her cave in Extreme Abyss Valley on the same day. When they got down from the mechanical eagle and saw the beautiful scenery of Extreme Abyss Valley without any restrictions, the 2 disciples felt strange. Didn't Lord Daoist Qingwei set up a defensive formation in his cave? As they thought about it, they suddenly felt a slight movement of spiritual aura. A ferocious bird in the sky screeched but couldn't fly down. Only then did they realize that formations existed, but they couldn't see them because of their realm. After discovering this, they felt respect and fear in their hearts. It turned out that Lord Daoist Qingwei's attainments in formations had reached the realm of imperceptibility. Under Shui Linbo's guidance, the 2 disciples passed through the winding stone path and arrived at the hall of the cave. Anitha Master, I've brought them here. Imo Tiange was exchanging cultivation experience with Qin Shi. Hearing the voice, she looked up. The 2 disciples brought by Shui Linbo were both in the foundation building realm. One was a man and the other was a woman. The man looked middle-aged with a calm temperament, and the woman looked about 18 or 19 years old. She didn't look very old either. Seeing them, the 2 disciples hurriedly saluted. Disciple Yi-Wen Shisu pays respect to Grandmaster Shoujing and Grandmaster Qingwei. Yi-Wen Shisu. Imo Tiange repeated their names and said with a smile, Your names match well. It's really interesting. In the face of the Lord Daoist teasing, the 2 didn't know how to answer. Qin Shi stood up and said, I'm going to cultivate. If there's anything, just ask Linbo to do it. There's already a lot of things to do. Don't always do it yourself. It's just some trivial things. You ask Linbo for everything. She's only one person, so how can she handle everything? Then find a few more people. Qin Shi turned his head and said, Linbo, go to Fengxue and ask a few people to help. Shui Linbo answered, Yes. After thinking for a while, he said, Where's Zhenji? Ask him to come to see me. Zhenji went to the martial arts training hall. I'll call him back. She nodded, waved his hand, and went to the cultivation room. Follow me, Imotienga said to them, got up, and walked to another stone path. Wen and Shi Su hurriedly followed her. The stone path was wide and ordinary, but the two disciples became more and more shocked as they walked. There was obviously an extremely high-level restriction here. Although they could see the existence of the restriction, they couldn't tell what kind of restriction it was, let alone feel the changes of yin, yang, and the 5 elements. After walking to the end of the stone path, Imotienga stopped, made a seal with her hands, opened a stone door, and walked in. The two disciples hurriedly followed her. This stone room was very small and simple. There were no tables, chairs, beds, or cabinets. There were only rows of holes cut in the stone wall, in which all kinds of books, jade slips, formation discs, and formation flags were placed. All kinds of materials were piled randomly on the ground, and there was almost no place to stand. Imotienga sat down on the stone slab in the middle, which was slightly higher, and said, "Sit down." The two disciples carefully cleared the things under their feet and knelt down in a lower place. "Tell me about you first." She stretched out her hand, took a book, and asked as she flipped through it. Wen was the first to answer. Grandmaster Qingwei, I'm from Seoul's Retreat Peak. I entered the sect when I was a child, but my aptitude was ordinary, so I switched to practicing formations very early. Shi Su reported, I'm from Drifting Cloud Peak. I also entered the sect when I was a child and specialized in formations. Imotienga nodded. I'll ask you a few questions. Answer them according to your habits. The two of them knew she was going to test their attainments in formations. Imotienga asked 3 questions. The two disciples thought for a long time and answered them one by one. After they finished answering, they looked at her nervously. Your foundations are quite solid. There's a burning sea shattering sun formation here. I'll give you 3 days to think of a way to crack it. If you pass, I'll accept you as registered disciples and teach you everything I know about formations. If you can't pass, you can also learn formations from me, but only transporting formations. The two of them were both surprised and delighted. Shi Su hurriedly said, Grandmaster, to crack formations, imagination alone isn't accurate enough. You can use whatever you want here, she said, stood up, and walked out. I'll come back 3 days later. The two of them stood up to see her off. Yes, disciple obeys. When they returned to the hall, they heard Xianxia lecturing Yizhenji. You've been in the peak stage of the foundation building realm for some time, but instead of thinking about advancing to the core formation realm, you hang around in the martial arts hall every day. You have to know that fights of magical powers are important, but cultivation is the foundation. No matter how powerful a foundation building cultivator is, it's not as powerful as a core formation cultivator's casual attack. From today on, you don't need to go out. Stay in the valley and comprehend cultivation techniques. When the time is right, enter closed-door meditation to form your gold core. When your aunt was your age, she already entered closed-door meditation to form her nascent soul. Although I'm a bit inferior, I'm also in the peak stage of the core formation realm. As our disciple, how can you slack off? Yizhenji said aggrievedly, Master, you and Aunt are rare geniuses in the celestial pole. How can I compare to you? If you can't compare, you won't cultivate? Hualing is also preparing to form his gold core, right? Do you want to lose to him? I understand. The stone door opened and Yizhenji came out. When he saw her, he looked happy. Andy, you're here. Imotienga looked at him without saying anything. Yizhenji was confused. Auntie? After a while, Imotienga said, Zhenji, I know you don't have enough confidence in yourself, so you want to accumulate more before forming your gold core. But we don't have time now, so you have to form your gold core as soon as possible. Auntie, what happened? Imotienga shook her head. You'll know sooner or later. Go cultivate. Oh. Yizhenji obediently didn't ask any more questions and left alone. Soon after, Shui Linbo came back. Seeing her sitting there, she came over and reported, Auntie, the sect head said he'll send someone over tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Imotienga nodded. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, Linbua, you've put in a lot of effort. Are you satisfied with these days? Shui Linbua was stunned and stared at her blankly. Chapter 620. After being dumbfounded for a long time, Shui Linbua called out bitterly, Annie, Mo Tiange said slowly, there's nothing suspicious about your identity. No matter how we investigated, we couldn't find anything wrong with it. If we hadn't accidentally found Wanderer Baiyu's letter, I'm afraid we would never have known that you were his most favored maid. Shui Linbua was silent and didn't speak. Mo Tiange also didn't speak. She looked down at the teacup in her hand. After a long time, Shui Linbua slowly knelt down. Linbua has nothing to say. Please punish me, Auntie. How do you want me to punish you? Mo Tiange still didn't look at her. Shui Linbua closed her eyes. Even if you want to drive me out or abolish my cultivation, She couldn't finish her sentence. You really have nothing to say? Mo Tiange said, even in front of Jinji? Shui Linbua was stunned, and tears flowed down silently. Mo Tiange looked at her and said, I'll give you one more chance. If you still want to stay, tell me the truth. Shui Linbua stared at her blankly. After a long time, she stopped crying and began to narrate in a low voice. After the chaos in Linhai, I came to Kunwu. To make a living, I did everything. I worked as a maid, a waiter, went deep into the forest to pick medicinal herbs, hunted beasts. I did anything that could make money. But even so, the money I earned couldn't support my cultivation. Not to mention building my foundation, even reaching the high level of the aura refining realm was difficult. Later, I heard that there were many individual cultivators in Kuanzhong City and it was very prosperous, so I went there. Sure enough, there were many opportunities in Kuanzhong City. If I wanted to make money, there was work to do. Besides, foundation building cultivators could be seen everywhere. If I could get some advice from them, it would be a great blessing for low-level aura refining cultivators like me. But it's not easy to live in Kuanzhong City. If my cultivation level is low, I'll be bullied by others. When I went to the southern forest to pick medicinal herbs, I accidentally picked several hundreds of years old purple jade Ganoderma. I was ecstatic and thought I had a chance to build my foundation, but I was accidentally discovered by the owner of the medicine shop, and he took the Ganoderma. Shui Linbua paused for a while to calm down and then continued, I'm just a low-level aura refining cultivator with no background or backing. Who would make decisions for me? I even wanted to thank the boss for only robbing and not killing anyone. Other than accepting my fate, I had no other choice. Later on, the Wandering Cultivator Alliance put up a notice saying that Wanderer Baiyu was recruiting maids. I made up my mind and went to apply. Mo Tiange stared at her. Do you know what kind of person Wanderer Baiyu is? I know. Tears rolled down from her eyes, but Shui Linbua's expression was very calm. Everyone in Kuanzhong City knows that Wanderer Baiyu practices the plucking technique and often uses all kinds of methods to find suitable women and seize their primordial yin to aid his cultivation. The so-called maids are actually just cultivation furnaces. She looked up and saw Mo Tiange sitting in the seat of honor, staring at her indifferently without any expression. Shui Linbua smiled bitterly. I know you don't like my behavior, but the feeling of being helpless and hopeless has tortured me to the point of collapse. I want to take revenge, but I don't have a good aptitude and nothing, so I can't take revenge on the drugstore owner. If I become a core formation cultivator's maid, I might have a chance. I smoothly became Wanderer Baiyu's maid and entered his cave. However, he thought my cultivation level was too low and my aptitude was poor, so he didn't do anything to me. But Wanderer Baiyu has so many concubines and maids around him, so how could his days be easy? At first, I was miserably bullied, and after being bullied a lot, I got angry. Once I got angry, my heart also came back to life, but there's no medicine for regret. On the surface, it seems to be a beautiful place, but in fact, every living person is stepping on countless corpses. Besides, even if I beat everyone, so what? As long as Wanderer Baiyu changes his mind, he'll have to sacrifice himself. The tears on her face dried up. Shui Linbo took a deep breath and continued calmly, I can't get rid of this fate. In Wanderer Baiyu's eyes, I'm just a speck of dust, and he can do whatever he wants. So I thought, if I can't change my weakness, I'll turn this speck of dust into a pearl to prove to him that I'm of greater use. Maybe then he'll be willing to respect me. I'm not stupid, and I'm even smarter than ordinary people. I worked hard to learn from the people around me, learning to read people's minds, and learning to scheme. I spent 10 years doing many things I didn't want to do before finally becoming his most trusted maid. Wanderer Baiyu isn't a good person. He kills innocents and abducts women. There's almost nothing he doesn't do, but he's good to me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to build my foundation. At that time, I thought it would be good to live like this for the rest of my life. He gave me a place to live, and I'll serve him for the rest of my life. At this point, Shui Linbo paused for a moment and then said, if it weren't for him wanting me to be his human furnace later, human furnace, it's this word again. Mo Tiange sighed. Is this the fate that individual women can't escape? Shui Linbo lowered her head. After I built my foundation, Wanderer Baiyu was tempted. I begged him and said I'd do anything for him in this life as long as he gave me a little respect, but it was useless. He warned me that no matter how much he doted on me, I was just a pet, and a pet wasn't qualified to ask for respect from its master. So you ran away? Yes. Shui Linbo lowered her head, but her fists were clenched. I followed him for decades and did so many things for him, but I couldn't even protect myself. I couldn't accept it, so I ran away. What about Jinji? Why did he really have a chance to get involved? Shui Linbo hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, I had a chance to escape, but Jinji was muddle-headed and exposed my whereabouts, so I lost the chance. Wu was angry, so I deliberately let Wanderer Baiyu think it was Jinji who helped me escape. Mo Tiange didn't speak for a long time. Since she'd already said it, Shui Linbo simply said, I thought that even if I died this time, I wouldn't be lonely in the underworld with someone with me. It's just that I didn't expect that Jinji would protect me when he was caught because of me. He's been with me since he was 10 years old and has never seen the dangers of the world, so he's sincere and kind to people. This is his shortcoming but also his advantage. I didn't expect that I, who'd done all kinds of bad things, would meet such a simple person. Shui Linbo smiled with tears in her smile. For Wanderer Baiyu, daring to run away was a betrayal, and he never showed mercy to those who betrayed him. Jinji's background was too powerful, so he didn't dare to kill us, so he simply locked us up together. When he had time, he'd take us to torture us. So, Mo Tiange said, the story about hiding primordial Yin is fake. Shui Linbo smiled bitterly. Otherwise, how can I explain that he doesn't value primordial Yin and hates a human furnace he captured to the bone? Jinji killed Wanderer Baiyu because of your scheme, right? Shui Linbo nodded and admitted, yes. Mo Tiange tapped the rim of her cup and said, after killing Wanderer Baiyu and most of the insiders in the cave, Jinji aroused the sect's anger and killed the individual cultivators' alliance, so no one would know about your past. And through Jinji, you got a bright identity and got rid of your dark past. Shui Linbo smiled bitterly but didn't deny it. Then Linbo. Mo Tiange stared at her with no sadness or joy in her eyes. You've done your best. Are you satisfied with this kind of life? Shui Linbo lowered her head. When I wandered the celestial pole, I wondered why my spiritual roots weren't better. If they were a little better, I could go with that fairy. Later, when I came to Xianxia school with Jinji and saw my aunt, I thought, after reincarnation, I still ended up here. She kept her head down. I didn't ask for much. As long as there's a place for me to live, that's enough. I've done my best. I'm willing to live like this. What about Jinji? Are you also willing? She raised her head, her eyes calm. Auntie, except for this past, I've never told a lie. Mo Tiange remembered that when she first met her, she asked her, do you like Jinji? She answered yes, she did. Perhaps, a person like her, who had used all her strength to survive, would instead fall in love with someone who was so innocent that he did not know what scheming was. She would always remember that in those 10 years, he had wholeheartedly protected her without asking anything, going through life and death with her. In the near future, we'll ask Jinji to enter closed-door meditation to form his gold core, so you can't be trapped in trivial matters anymore. When the people sent by Feng Shui arrive, you should also enter closed-door meditation until you form your gold core. Shui Linbo suddenly raised her head and looked at her. Auntie, Mo Tianga's expression remained unchanged. Shui Linbo understood that she couldn't find a trace of displeasure on her face. She kowtowed deeply and said sincerely, Linbo, thank you for giving me another chance. After Shui Linbo left, she came out of the cultivation room. Seeing that she was still lost in thought, he asked, What's wrong? Do you have any other questions? Mo Tianga came back to her senses and shook her head. That's it. She flipped through the book in his hand and said, This is really a coincidence. When we destroyed the individual cultivators' alliance, we brought back a pile of ancient books, but no one read them. If we didn't happen to be looking for something, how could we have found it? Linbo, she's really scheming. Is it safe to keep such a person around us? Mo Tianga said, You just said that if there's anything, we can just call Linbo. She said, I think she's been very well behaved all these years. Even if she hides something, there's no need to pursue it too much. I've been thinking, Mo Tianga said, that if she has feelings for Jinji and sincerely takes care of the cave for us, we won't pursue anything. Otherwise, there's no need for her to exist. She then changed the topic. Jinji and Linbo are both in closed-door meditation, so you should quickly call Fei back. Let's have a total closed-door meditation, from the old to the young, from humans to beasts, whether it's your spiritual beast or mine. This sentence successfully made Mo Tianga laugh. Nonsense. Chapter 621. What she said sounded like a joke, but this was indeed their plan. Apart from Xiaofeng, who had just reached the 8th rank, Fei was already in the 7th rank. Xiaohua and Xiaofan had eaten countless blood-eating vines, so their cultivation levels had grown extremely fast. They would soon reach the 7th rank, and with a bit more effort, they would be able to take human form in the 8th rank. If they were ordered to enter closed-door meditation now and given medicinal pills and divine beast's breath, it wouldn't be impossible for them to advance to the 8th rank in a few decades. The next day, Luo Fengshui personally came with some people. She chose a pair of brother and sister, both of whom were in the foundation-building realm. They were already more than 100 years old, but they still looked like teenagers. When Mo Tianga saw them, she almost sprayed out the tea in her mouth. Why are you two here? With Han Jian here, do you still need to work for others? These two people were Zhan Bai's sworn siblings, Xiaoguzi and Xiaozui. Kuang Zhu had long formed his gold core. Zhan Bai was currently in closed-door meditation and was said to have succeeded, but he hadn't come out yet. Core formation cultivators could open their own Immortal's caves and recruit disciples and attendants. With these two backing them, they didn't need to look for errands like other foundation-building cultivators. Xiaoguzi chuckled. Grandmaster Qingwei, how could you be someone else? In any case, we're old friends. Besides, this is a good job. Running errands for two nascent soul Daoists, who knows how many people would fight over it. We borrowed senior Marshal Brother Kuang Zhu's name and went to Marshal Antbingxin's place to get this job. Stinky brat, how dare you ruin my image? Luo Fengshui glared at him with a smile, then turned to Mo Tianga. They were driven out by senior Marshal Brother Han Jian. When he heard I was looking for someone to take care of your Immortal's cave, senior Marshal Brother Han Jian dragged them to me. I thought they could be considered your acquaintances, so they're better than strangers. Mo Tianga stared at them. How did you offend Han Jian? Xiaoguzi rubbed his nose. Senior Marshal Brother Kuang Zhu said we're not ambitious. We're already more than 100 years old, but we still act like teenagers. He even said that we were so lazy because we stayed by his side, so he kicked us out. Good kick. Luo Fengshui clapped and said, Look at you two. How long have you been in the foundation building realm? Each of them was lazier than the last in their cultivation. Originally, your senior martial brother Bai's cultivation base wasn't much higher than yours, but now he's about to form his core. You're just barely in the middle foundation establishment stage. Xiaoguzi said, "What's so good about being like senior martial brother Bai? It's all about cultivation, alchemy, and medical skills. I'm going crazy just thinking about it. In any case, we're not cut out for cultivation." Xiaozue chimed in from the side. Martial Uncle Bingxin built her foundation earlier than Grandmaster Qingwei, and now Grandmaster Qingwei is already a nascent soul cultivator. Martial Uncle Bingxin also formed her gold core not long ago. Luo Fengxue was rendered speechless. Among these two guys, Xiaoguzi was mischievous, while Xiaozue was straight to the point. It really wasn't easy to win against them verbally. Seeing this, Mo Tiange really wanted to laugh. Luo Fengxue didn't have many moments where she was rendered speechless. "Grandmaster Qingwei, please accept us. We don't have anywhere else to go," Xiaoguzi said. The two of them stared at her with sparkling eyes. Mo Tiange said, "You can't be lazy while you're here. Everything in the cave must be handled in an orderly manner. You'll also be responsible for the trivial matters related to the various peaks." Xiaoguzi patted his thin chest and said, "Grandmaster, rest assured. I'm the best at welcoming and sending people off. Xiaozue knows how to take care of things best. Just leave it to us. Grandmaster doesn't need to worry at all." Mo Tiange shifted her gaze and saw Luo Fengxue nodding at her, so she said, "All right, I'll keep you here for the time being. If you do well, you'll get medicinal pills, magic weapons, and everything else. If you don't, you'll have to go back to Hanhou." The two of them jumped up and high-fived each other. Then they earnestly thanked her. "Thank you, Grandmaster Qingwei." Since the decision had been made, Mo Tiange summoned Shui Linbua and told her to hand over all the affairs of the cave to the two siblings while she prepared to enter closed-door meditation. In addition, she sent a message to call Fei Fei back. Although it had taken human form, it had taken advantage of White Tiger's breath, so its cultivation level wasn't high enough. As for Little Feng, her injuries hadn't healed yet, so it wasn't time for her to enter closed-door meditation. Little Feng also went to the steward's hall to ask for an identity tablet. The inquiry elder's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Little Feng had taken human form in the 8th rank, so Xianxing School had one more nascent soul cultivator. ****, the stone door opened, and Mo Tiange stepped into the stone room. The two people in the stone room looked up and saw her. One was happy while the other was depressed. "Greetings to Grandmaster Qingwei." The two of them saluted her. Mo Tiange nodded and sat down on the stone platform in the middle. "How was it?" Yiwen was the happy one. He first held up a formation disc and presented it to her. "Disciple is slow-witted. I could only think of this method to crack it." Mo Tiange turned to Shisu. "What about you?" Shisu's eyes were lifeless and she looked exhausted, but now she calmed down. She picked up a book beside her and said, "This formation is extremely exquisite. Disciple's attainments in formations aren't high enough, so Disciple is willing to admit defeat if I can only dismantle these changes of yin and yang and the 5 elements." Mo Tiange took the book and read the formation disc and the book. A moment later, she looked up. Shisu had already given up. She lowered her head and looked very sad. Yiwen looked at her nervously. The cracking method he submitted was only the result of his practice on the formation disc. He couldn't put it into practice here, so it was still unknown whether it could be cracked or not. Mo Tiange looked at Yiwen and said, "This can indeed crack the burning sea shattering sun formation, but you didn't dismantle the original formation, so many parts are very stiff." Yiwen was nervous, but he braced himself and explained, "Grandmaster, this formation is exquisite. 3 days isn't enough to dismantle it. Disciple couldn't think of anything else, so I acted on my own." Mo Tiange nodded slightly. "With your attainments in formations, 3 days really isn't enough to dismantle it." Yiwen relaxed a little and heard her say, "Your method of breaking the formation can be counted as breaking the formation with the formation. It's just that it's too violent, it's no different from perishing together." His heart was in his throat again. Mo Tiange smiled. However, although you took the shortcut, cracking it is cracking it. Being flexible is your strength. I'll keep my word and accept you as my registered disciple. Ewan was overjoyed and kowtowed. Thank you, Grandmaster. Thank you, Grandmaster. Imotienga waved her hand to stop him from kowtowing. She then turned to Shisu and said, "From this dismantling, I can see your foundation is very solid. It's very rare for you to dismantle such a complicated formation without any mistakes. Unfortunately, you don't know how to be flexible and don't have enough time. You'd better focus on dismantling the original formation first." Shisu's heart sank even more. She knew she failed and missed this good opportunity. However, to learn formations, one must have a strong will. One must not turn back until he hits the wall. Not knowing how to be flexible can also be said to be persistent. With this kind of willpower, one can definitely become a great formation master in the future. Imotienga stopped and looked at Shisu with a smile. "I want to accept you as my registered disciple. Are you willing?" Shisu was very surprised, and her tired expression was swept away. "Immersive? Is what Grandmaster said true? Why would I lie to you?" Imotienga said, "If you're willing, you can come here tomorrow." I'm willing. Shisu nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Imotienga put down the formation discs and books in her hands. "You can go back and move here tomorrow." "Yes, Master." The two of them were overjoyed. After Ewen and Shisu moved here, Imotienga asked people to open 2 stone rooms next to the formation performing room for them to live in and teach them the transporting formation. After teaching them the transporting formation, she didn't have time to teach them personally, so she opened the formation performing room to them and let them study by themselves. This wasn't difficult for formation masters. Self-study was their main learning method. Several days later, Lord Daoist Huayan came back with Lord Daoist Jinghe. Imotienga thought that Lord Daoists of Xianxia School had been flying around Mount Taikang and Quanzhong City these days. Didn't they attract people's attention? As soon as they came back, they were summoned to Shangqing Palace. Even Lord Daoist Lingxi, who was really in closed-door meditation, was summoned. Upon seeing them, Lord Daoist Jinghe squinted at them. "You two have a lot of secrets." Imotienga smiled. "Master, you taught us not to show our wealth. Keeping it in our belly is our secret." Lord Daoist Jinghe snorted, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. He was in a good mood because he just got a lot of precious and amazing resources. Lord Daoist Huayan said with a smile, "Qingwei, you didn't make it clear. Your longevity pills didn't increase your lifespan by 100 years, but 500 years. Fortunately, none of us have taken longevity pills. Otherwise, it would be too painful to have treasures in front of us but not be able to enjoy them." Didn't I say that? Imotienga thought for a while. She didn't seem to have said that. Lord Daoist Huayan beamed. "I thought I could try to reach the middle stage with more than 300 years of lifespan, but I felt something wrong after taking it. Senior brother Xinjiang tested it and found that it was 500 years of lifespan. With another 500 years of lifespan, I won't just be in the middle stage. Maybe I'll have a chance to advance to the late stage. The higher one's cultivation level was, the longer their lifespan would be. If Lord Daoist Huayan could advance to the middle stage, his lifespan wouldn't be as short as it was now. It was indeed possible for him to advance to the late stage. When she concocted the longevity pill for the first time, Imotienga thought the efficacy of this kind of ancient longevity pill was too amazing. 4 nascent soul cultivators, 500 years was enough time to change their fate. Yes, Xinjiang may have a chance to touch the deification realm, and I may also have a chance to cultivate to the peak of the late stage. Lord Daoist Jinghe was very happy. Now, it's hard for our Xianxia School not to prosper. With our lifespan, we can wait until a group of nascent soul cultivators appear in our school. With these medicinal pills, the lifespan of the existing Lord Daoists of the nascent soul realm would increase, and the probability of a core formation master advancing to the nascent soul realm would also increase. They could almost imagine Xianxia School having more than a dozen nascent soul cultivators at the same time. Mo Tiange remembered Qin. She once said the medicinal herbs in the virtual sky world were enough to support a school to dominate the celestial pole. Now they had a chance to realize it. As they talked, Lord Daoist Xianxia arrived. Everyone saluted him and took their seats. "Senior Martial Brothers, why did you summon me?" Lord Daoist Xianxia asked. "Didn't you say we were pressed for time and we had to improve our strength as soon as possible?" Lord Daoist Huayan said, "It's about this." He took out a Qiankuan bag from his robe. Shoujing and Qingwei found a batch of supplies for the school. "This is your share." Lord Daoist Xianxia was confused until he saw the things in the Qiankuan bag. He was shocked. Senior Martial Brothers. Chapter 622. Lord Daoist Xianxia formed his nascent soul at the age of 200. With the help of his spiritual root, he was diligent and had many opportunities. However, no matter how many opportunities he had never seen so many top-grade medicinal pills. Lord Daoist Huayan enthusiastically introduced to him, "Xianxia, you probably haven't seen this before. This is the longevity pill." Unexpectedly, Lord Daoist Xianxia said, "I've seen the longevity pill in my master's place, but it's of a higher grade." Oh. Lord Daoist Huayan remembered that his master, Lord Daoist Tianyun, had taken the longevity pill, but he died in the end. He said with a smile, "This longevity pill is unusual. It can increase one's lifespan by 500 years. He said it casually, intending to shock Lord Daoist Xianxia. This time, he finally got what he wanted. Lord Daoist Xianxia was so surprised that he couldn't speak. "Really?" "Of course. 500 years. If this news gets out, I'm afraid the world will be shocked." Lord Daoist Xianxia calmed down immediately and thought of this. "Yes," Lord Daoist Huayan said, "not only the longevity pill, but also other medicinal pills and spiritual herbs. 10,000 years of fruit, which can help people form their nascent souls, and some can even be used to break through the nascent soul realm. We might not be able to get these medicinal pills even if we risked our lives in the past. Besides, we also have the constitution-enhancing pill. It can be said that our cultivation progress and realms may increase to an incredible level. If these things are leaked, it will bring great trouble to the sect." There was no way the Dao Lords hadn't thought about what Dao Lord Rhino said. So, confidentiality is the top priority. The fewer people who know about this batch of materials, the better. As soon as Lord Daoist Jinghe finished speaking, Lord Daoist Xianxia wondered, "Who will know if we don't tell them?" Lord Daoist Huayan shook his head. "Xianxia, there's more than what we have. There's another batch." "There's another batch?" Lord Daoist Xianxia's eyes widened in surprise. Lord Daoist Huayan said, "Those things are not as precious as what we have, but they are much more valuable to the sect than what we have." Lord Daoist Xianxia was speechless. He knew the weight of the Qiankuan bag in his hand. If it was more than that, how valuable would it be? He stared at Mo Tiange and Qin Shi with admiration in his eyes. "Senior Martial Brother Shoujing, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, could it be that you've plundered some great ancient sect's collection?" Xianxia's half-joking words made the two of them smile. With a smile, Mo Tiange said, "How could the books and records of a great ancient cultivation group only contain these? Unfortunately, when we went to the returning ruins sea last time, we didn't manage to move that Immortal Palace's storehouse back. Otherwise, you little girl, you really don't know what greed is." Lord Daoist Jinghe blew his beard, pointed at Qin Shi, and said, "When this brat was in the foundation-building realm, he discovered the remains of a great Middle Ages cultivation group. Several great cultivation groups divided a lot of resources, but those were only a few small storehouses. How could the storehouses of a great Middle Ages cultivation group be easily moved by others?" The four of them talked among themselves, but none of them asked about the source of the resources. Mo Tiange felt at ease. She thought what Qin Shi said was right. They wouldn't insist on knowing where these treasures came from. She should have more confidence in the sect. Because of this batch of medicinal pills and spiritual herbs, the Lord Daoists made several decisions. First of all, Lord Daoist Huayan, who had enough lifespan, would return to the sect and enter closed-door meditation like them, trying to advance to the middle stage. Second, Lord Daoist Jinghe had to guard the sect for a long time and train disciples. It would be best if he could train a new generation of nascent soul Lord Daoists in the next few hundred years. As for Xianyin and Miaoyi, they could only be temporarily sacrificed. Senior Martial Brother, what about me? Lord Daoist Lingxi asked. Lord Daoist Huayan said, the three of you, just focus on cultivation as before. Senior Martial Brothers and sisters are all busy, but I don't care about anything. I even got so many treasures for free, Lingxi. Lord Daoist Jinghe interrupted him. You're the disciples with the most promising prospects in the sect. The advancement of your cultivation level is the enhancement of the sect's strength, and you're also working for the sect. Don't think too much and just focus on closed-door meditation. And you too. Lord Daoist Jinghe turned to Emotienga and Qin Shi. I heard you said you're in closed-door meditation, but there are people coming and going in your caves. What's going on? Qin Shi said, Master, since we're in closed-door meditation, we naturally have to deal with trivial matters first. You have so many trivial matters? Lord Daoist Jinghe looked at Emotienga. You accepted 2 formation masters as registered disciples. Do you want to pass on what you've learned? Emotienga nodded and said, I always feel that I won't have this leisure in the future. I'm not like Senior Martial Brother Xinjiang and Senior Martial Brother Huayan who have many disciples and inheritance. If I don't pass them on now, I'm afraid I won't be able to pass on what I've learned. Lord Daoist Huayan sighed. Qingwei, it's Xianqing School's good fortune that you think like this. Emotienga didn't know whether it was Xianqing School's good fortune or not, but she just thought it was the right thing to do. The Lord Daoists exchanged some information before going back to their respective caves. When they returned to their caves, Qin Shi saw Emotienga had a lot on her mind, so he asked, What's wrong? Emotienga shook her head and then nodded. I'm thinking, who should I pass the art of engineering to? Qin Shi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he sighed and reached out to touch her head. How about we also start accepting disciples? Emotienga was a bit hesitant. We might not have much time in the future. Is it okay to accept disciples? Qin Shi said, You're overcomplicating things. There's a Dao-seeking palace in the sect that's responsible for teaching disciples. Except for handymen, outer disciples, and inner disciples who don't have a master, elite disciples whose masters are in closed-door meditation are also under the jurisdiction of the Dao-seeking palace. Your cultivation technique is unique, and master has never been in closed-door meditation, so you haven't experienced that stage. We all went through it like this. Oh. Emotienga thought he was right. High-level cultivators in closed-door meditation could easily last for years or even decades. Didn't they care about their disciples? She asked again, Who in the Dao-seeking palace is in charge of the elite disciples? What realm are they in? Qin Shi said, According to the usual practice, the Dao-seeking palace's technique-imparting elders are all experienced core formation cultivators, so under normal circumstances, even if the elite disciples are core formation cultivators, they can still handle it. Besides, core formation cultivators have nascent soul Daoists to guide them regularly, so it's not a big problem. Junior Martial Brother Lingxi is an example. He doesn't have a master, and for many years, he's been guided by his senior martial brothers and sisters in turn. Qin Shi paused and smiled again. You advance too fast. You haven't experienced the stages that many disciples have gone through, so you don't know. I see. Emotienga suddenly understood. That's right. Big sects have a perfect system, so they should have ways to deal with all kinds of situations. So if you want to pass on your knowledge, you can start to accept disciples. When we have time in closed-door meditation, we can give them some pointers. First, as elite disciples, they must have the ability to be independent. Second, the sect will consider everything and won't hold them back. Emotienga thought for a long time and finally made a decision. All right, in that case, let's also start accepting disciples. Once Emotienga made her decision, the whole Xianqing school became busy. Lord Daoist Shoujing and Lord Daoist Qingwei are going to accept disciples. This news spread to the 6 peaks in no time. Disciples from each peak who had connections but didn't started to take action. They inquired about the news, asked for favors, and even directly came to the sect. Fortunately, Xiaoguzi and Xiaozue were really capable, so they didn't need to worry about these things. Martial nephew Zhan. A white-haired, sage-like old cultivator called out to the youngster in front of him with a cordial smile. Xiaoguzi turned around. When he saw the cultivator, he immediately came to greet him. "Isn't this martial uncle Yenimo? A distinguished guest has come to visit. No wonder the magpies kept chirping today. Martial uncle, Xiaoguzi sends his greetings to you." The old cultivator waved his hand. "Martial nephew Zhan is too polite. I'm not a distinguished guest." "Of course you're a distinguished guest, martial uncle Yenimo." The two of them flattered each other for a while before Master Daoist Yen Mo slowly got to the point. "I heard martial uncle Shoujing and martial uncle Qingwei want to accept disciples. Does martial nephew Zhan have any unique information?" As he spoke, he took something out of his sleeve and stuffed it into Xiaoguzi's hand. Xiaoguzi understood tacitly and took it. He said with a smile, "Xiaoguzi only takes care of the 2 Grandmasters' caves, so how could I have any unique information? However." He lowered his voice and said mysteriously, "Martial nephew and Grandmaster Qingwei are old friends, so I know a little about her temperament and preferences." Master Daoist Yen Mo also came closer and handed him another package. "I'll have to trouble martial nephew Zhan." Xiaoguzi thought for a moment then said, "Grandmaster Qingwei is the most low-key and amiable person, so she doesn't like arrogant disciples. When it comes to accepting disciples, first, the disciple must have a good temperament and mustn't be too arrogant. Second, the disciple must be independent and mustn't rely too much on the elders. Third, it's best if the disciple understands formations." He looked at Master Daoist Yen Mo and smiled. "As for the others, they must have good aptitude and a good temperament. I don't need to say more, right?" Master Daoist Yen Mo understood. "Oh, of course," Xiaoguzi said, "it's best if the disciple is young. After all, the 2 Grandmasters are only 200 or 300 years old, aren't they?" Master Daoist Yen Mo understood what he meant. He said, "Of course it's not me. I'm already so old, yet I still want to worship the 2 martial uncles as my masters," Xiaoguzi chuckled. Martial uncle is thinking for the sake of the younger generation. It's human nature, human nature. Then martial uncle Shoujing, Xiaoguzi said, "Grandmaster Shoujing's temperament is similar to Grandmaster Qingwei's. Besides, if Grandmaster Qingwei is satisfied, why would Grandmaster Shoujing say no?" Xiaoguzi winked at him. Master Daoist Yen Mo acted as if he suddenly realized something. I understand. The two of them continued to flatter each other for a while before Master Daoist Yen Mo left, feeling satisfied. Xiaoguzi stroked the Qianquan bag in his hand. He was extremely proud of himself. A core formation master is indeed generous. "Big brother." Xiaozue, who was standing behind him, frowned. "You casually accepted other people's things. What would you do if the 2 Grandmasters found out?" Xiaoguzi waved his hand carelessly. "Do you think the 2 Grandmasters won't know I'm accepting things? If I don't accept things, how can I get rid of these flies? The 2 Grandmasters are well aware of this. As long as we properly carry out the task the Grandmasters gave us and don't delay their business, they won't haggle over it." "You found out again?" Don't worry." Xiaoguzi gave her a Qianquan bag. "Besides, between the 2 of us, do we even need to distinguish who's who? Isn't what's mine yours?" After taking the Qianquan bag, Xiaozue muttered with satisfaction, "You're right." Chapter 623. After bustling about for 2 months, the apprenticeship event finally came to an end. The 2 Lord Daoists accepted 3 disciples in total. One was Lord Daoist Shoujing's disciple, and the other 2 were Lord Daoist Qingwei's disciples. The 3 disciples were all in the foundation building realm. Each of them had a different temperament, but they were all resolute, quick-witted, and intelligent people. During the apprenticeship event, Xiaoguzi spread the news about what kind of disciples the two Lord Daoists liked and what requirements they had. This made it a lot less troublesome for them to choose disciples, so they didn't have to send a lot of messy candidates. Because of this, they specially rewarded the siblings with a top-grade magic tool each, which made them so happy that they could only see their teeth. The two of them made a lot of money from this apprenticeship event. When people from all walks of life came to inquire about the news, they felt embarrassed not to send them a few good things. All in all, it was a huge fortune for them. Moreover, with the two of them here, as long as they finished their business, the two grandmasters wouldn't care about what they did. It was much more comfortable than living with Guangzhou. It'd be great if it could always be like this. On a protruding rock on the surface of the extreme abyss pool, Xiaoguzi stretched his body, feeling extremely happy. Isn't that right? Senior martial brother Guangzhou always told us to be diligent and cultivate. The two of us aren't cut out for that. Xiaozue carried a basket and walked to his side. The two of them took out a grill, bamboo skewers, firewood, and all kinds of seasonings from the basket. In the end, they took out several pieces of beast meat and started barbecuing. So you're here. A voice rang out next to them. Yixinji rubbed his nose and walked over. It smells so good. Share it with me. As he said that, he took a well-cooked piece of beast meat from the basket and stuffed it into his mouth. Martial Uncle Yi, Xiaoguzi said, you're really friendly. Yixinji didn't care at all. He said with a smile, it's just a few pieces of beast meat. Why are you so stingy? Xiaozue stopped barbecuing. He tilted his head and stared at Yixinji for a long time before he suddenly said, Martial Uncle Yi, is something bothering you? Yixinji swallowed the barbecued meat in 2 or 3 bites, then scooped some water from the pool to wash his hands. How did you know? I know just by looking at you. Xiaoguzi bumped his arm. If you're like this, I'll know. Yixinji rolled his eyes at him but didn't say anything. Yes, Martial Uncle Yi, Xiaozue said, looking at you, no one else told you about this, right? Yixinji rolled his eyes at her. After a while he said, Master wants me to enter seclusion to form my gold core. In that case, I'll form my gold core, said Xiaoguzi casually as he ate the roasted meat. That's right, core formation is a good thing. Yixinji paused for a moment then said, but I don't have much confidence. You still don't have confidence? Little Zue asked curiously. Martial Uncle, you're the disciple of the most outstanding nascent soul cultivator in Xianxia School. Yixinji showed a bitter smile. It's precisely because I'm Auntie's and Master's disciple that my aptitude is ordinary. If it weren't for Auntie and Master's care and if it weren't for me being diligent, how could I be where I am today? Both of them are heaven-bestowed geniuses, but Master was right that day. At my age, Auntie has already entered closed-door meditation to form her nascent soul, and Master has also reached the peak stage of the core formation realm, but I haven't even crossed the barrier of the core formation realm. Once Yixinji finished speaking, his mood became gloomy. He understood the principle of accumulating experience and understood that his aptitude was ordinary, so he wanted to accumulate more experience before entering closed-door meditation to form his gold core. But now, his master wanted him to form his gold core earlier. He really didn't have enough confidence in himself. In the end, he heard Xiaoguzi say, Martial Uncle Yi, you're so strange. If you can be compared with them casually, would they still be heaven-bestowed geniuses? You're not even 200 years old yet, so you're even younger than us. Most elite disciples form their gold core at around 200 years old, right? Some can't even form their gold core their whole lives. But Yixinji was speechless for a long time. I'm Auntie and Master's disciple. If you're their disciple, do you have to be the same as them? There are so many nascent soul Lord Daoists in our school, but I don't see any Lord Daoist disciple who's already in the nascent soul realm, Little Zue said and even commented, I think you're just making trouble for yourself over nothing. Yixinji felt depressed that he had been struggling for several months, but in the end he was criticized by this brother and sister pair as worthless. Martial Uncle Yi. Xiaoguzi pressed his shoulder and said, just relax. You have your own path, so why do you care so much? Look at me and little Zhu. We're practically idling around waiting to die. Senior martial brother Kuang Zhu even said we're wasting Mount Taikong's spiritual aura if we're alive. Did you hear that from your sworn brother? You've only been criticized by your master. What's the big deal? Did senior martial brother Han Jian really say that? That's right. Little Zue didn't take his words to heart and started counting with his fingers. Every month he teaches us a lesson, every 10 days he urges us to cultivate, and every day he sends someone to monitor our cultivation. Look, is this how humans live their lives? Then the two of you. Yi Zhenji felt extremely strange. Then why were they still so carefree? We just don't like cultivating. Xiaoguzi said, everyone has their own aspirations. I think it's enough for us to cultivate to the foundation-building realm and live for 300 to 400 years, watching the mountains and rivers every day. As for forming our gold cores, we don't have such aspirations, and we don't have such good aptitudes. Little Zue added, in your opinion, shouldn't we go out and die? Their 4 eyes stared at him. Yi Zhenji was at a loss. Then do you want to form your gold core? Xiaoguzi asked. Yi Zhenji nodded without hesitation. Of course. Then it's settled. Little Zue shrugged. If you want to form your gold core, form your gold core. If you fail, form it again. In any case, you have a good master and aunt, so it's already much easier for you than for other people. Why do you have to think about those useless things? Upon hearing this, Yi Zhenji felt enlightened. That's right. If I fail, I can try again. He stood up abruptly, then disappeared like a wisp of smoke. I'm going to cultivate. Upon seeing his figure disappearing, Xiaoguzi and little Zhe giggled and high-fived each other. He's finally gone. There's one less person to share meat with. Zhenji's in closed-door meditation, Xianxia said. Mo Tiange frowned slightly. He entered closed-door meditation in such a hurry. Will there be a problem? It's fine, Xianxia said. Let him try. If he fails, he'll know what his flaws are. That's the only way. What about Linbo? Xianxia asked. Linbo told me that he'll also enter closed-door meditation after dealing with the last bit of business. Xianxia nodded slightly. That's good. Fei will be back soon, right? He'll be back in a few days. Mo Tiange paused and said, Xiaohua and Xiaofan are already in the 7th rank. They're quite obedient, so we don't need to worry about them. That's good. They didn't need to worry about anyone, so they could focus on their new disciples. Only after they brought them into the sect could they enter closed-door meditation with peace of mind. This time, without prior consultation, they all chose foundation establishment disciples. First, core formation cultivators mostly had a master, and those who didn't have a master were too old. Second, core formation cultivators mostly had chosen a cultivation technique and had their own Dao. Foundation building cultivators, on the other hand, had just entered the sect, so their Dao was like a blank piece of paper that could be used at will. Third, foundation building disciples were more obedient than core formation cultivators. As for the other requirements, most of them were the same as what Xiaoguzi said, but the candidates were beyond everyone's expectations. The disciples Mo Tiange accepted were a man and a woman. The man's name was Xie Jingyi, and the woman's name was Qi Yunshu. Both of them had just entered the foundation building realm not long ago and were in their 30s. As for elite disciples, their age of entering the foundation building realm was neither too early nor too late, and their aptitudes weren't the best. They both had relatively ordinary double spiritual roots. They were chosen mainly because of a few points. Xie Jingyi came from a small cultivation clan with an ordinary background. He had a steady character, could endure loneliness, and had a foundation in formations, so he was the best candidate to learn the art of machineries. Qi Yunshu, on the other hand, had a special constitution. The yin inside her body flourished while the yang spiritual aura in her body almost reached the point where she couldn't retain any yang spiritual aura. Because of this, Mo Tiange felt Qi Yunshu should be a very good successor of the art of Sunu. Moreover, Qi Yunshu was a man of few words, so Mo Tiange, who liked peace and quiet, was very satisfied. As for Qin Shi, he originally didn't want to accept disciples. After all, Yixinji was his disciple. However, during the selection process, he met a good candidate, so he accepted him. That person's name was Sang Yushu. He was a bit older, almost 100 years old, but his cultivation level had been stuck in the early stage of the foundation building realm. His spiritual roots were also ordinary. He didn't even have double spiritual roots, but rather 3 spiritual roots. Logically speaking, with such conditions, he couldn't even be considered an elite disciple. Core formation cultivators wouldn't want to accept him as a disciple, but Qin Shi took a fancy to him. The reason was the same as Qi Yunshu's. Sang Yushu's constitution was extremely young, so he couldn't retain yin aura. Because of this, his cultivation progress was extremely slow. It was said that when he registered to participate in the selection, many cultivators in the same batch laughed at him for overestimating his own capabilities. Unexpectedly, he defeated a group of cultivators with superior aptitudes and noble backgrounds and became Lord Daoist Shou Jing's second disciple. Those cultivators who laughed at him regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They thought, since even Sang Yushu was chosen, I presumably have a better chance. How could I miss this opportunity? However, they never thought that every single disciple eliminated by Sang Yushu was much more outstanding than them. After the selection ended, the 3 disciples packed their luggage and moved into their Immortal's cave in Extreme Abyss Valley. With disciples and attendants, Lord Daoist Shou Jing and Lord Daoist Qingwei finally had the air of nascent soul cultivators. Inside the hall, the 3 disciples cautiously stood in front of them. The 3 of them had one thing in common. Their aptitudes weren't that outstanding, and their backgrounds were also relatively ordinary. This time, even they didn't dare to believe they were chosen by Lord Daoist Shou Jing to become their disciples. Tiange stared at her 2 disciples. Xie Jingyi looked like he was in his early 20s. His posture was tall and straight, his eyes were clear, and his outward appearance was excellent. It could be said that he had the standard appearance of a disciple from a prestigious cultivation group. As for Qi Yunshu, her appearance wasn't outstanding. Her appearance was ordinary, and she was thin and silent. Compared to Shisu, she was much worse. However, her temperament was calm. In front of 2 Lord Daoists, she wasn't the slightest bit timid and had a unique charm. "Are you all ready?" she asked. "Yes, Grandmaster." Xie Jingyi cupped his hands. The apprenticeship ceremony hadn't been held yet, so right now, he could only call her Grandmaster. Qi Yunshu also nodded. "Yes." Sang Yushu remained silent and only lowered his head. The one asking the question wasn't his master, so he didn't need to answer. "Then go and rest first. Tomorrow is the apprenticeship ceremony. In the future, you'll be my official disciples." The 2 of them answered in unison, "Yes, disciple obeys." Xie Jingyi and Qi Yunshu withdrew, but Sang Yushu still stood there silently. Qin Shi looked at him and asked, "Are you wondering why I picked you?" Sang Yushu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, disciple's aptitude is ordinary. In Grandmaster's opinion, I can even be considered poor. I'm not outstanding in any other aspect. Why did Grandmaster pick me?" Qin Shi smiled and said, "I picked you because first, you're suitable to cultivate my cultivation technique. Second, your mentality is very stable and you're very upright. Even though you're almost 100 years old and are still stuck in the foundation building realm, you're still calm and don't belittle yourself. On the path of the great Tao, although aptitude is important, mentality is even more important." Seeing Sang Yushu's expression of sudden realization, Qin Shi said, "However, your aptitude is much worse than the elite disciples and you're far behind them. If you don't work hard, you won't be able to reach the end." Sang Yushu's expression turned serious. "Disciple will definitely be strict with myself and won't slack off." Qin Shi smiled. "Whether you're qualified to be my advanced inner disciple or even my direct disciple is still unknown. Work hard and prove yourself with facts." Chapter 624. The next day, the apprenticeship ceremony was very simple. They didn't even go to Clear Spring Peak's tranquil heart hall. Instead, they just stayed in the Immortal's cave, pouring tea, paying respect to their master, and listening to their master's teachings. The three of them were only inner disciples, so they didn't have the qualifications to hold a grand master apprenticeship ceremony. Tiange's own master apprenticeship ceremony was also very simple. She didn't even have a title. One day, Lord Daoist Jinghe called her over, offered her a cup of tea, and that was it. As for Qin Shi, there was no need to mention him at all. In addition, Shui Linbo was also called over to offer tea to him. She had been in charge of the cave residents for all these years and had been conscientious. Now that there was a new disciple entering the sect, she, as the first one to enter the sect, could no longer be a registered disciple. After the ceremony, the three disciples chose their own cultivation rooms. Qi Yunshu and Xie Jingyi chose a house near them, while Sang Yushu chose the wooden house beside the extreme abyss pool. The following days were dull and dull. It was nothing more than cultivation and teaching disciples. A few days later, Fei returned. The first thing he said upon entering the extreme abyss valley was, "Why are there so many people?" Xiaoguzi greeted him. "Are you Martial Uncle Fei?" Fei nodded and looked at him in confusion. Xiaoguzi said, "We're deacons who take care of the two grandmasters' caves. This is my younger sister, Xiaozue." He then pointed at Sang Yushu next to him. "This is Grandmaster Shou Jing's newly accepted disciple. Grandmaster Qingwei accepted 4 disciples and is currently teaching them." "Oh." Fei flicked his sleeves. "He's actually accepting a disciple. How troublesome." As he spoke, he entered the cave. Not long after he entered the cave, he saw a beautiful woman in her mid-20s sitting leisurely in the hall, making tea. "Who are you?" Fei looked her up and down. "You look familiar." The woman glanced at him. "You don't recognize me?" Fei carefully sensed it and was shocked. "You're Xiaofeng?" Xiao Feng smiled and pointed at the table opposite her. "Do you want some tea?" Making tea was Fei's specialty, so she didn't refuse. She sat down and drank a cup. "Not bad, but it's not as good as mine." Xiao Feng glanced at the tea set. "Then you do it?" When Tiange came out, the two of them were making tea and drinking tea in harmony, which made her dumbfounded. "What's going on? Is it raining red?" Tiange raised her head to look. Unfortunately, she couldn't see the sky inside the cave. These two fellows had very strong personalities. How could they get along so well? Fei rolled her eyes at her and said, "Could it be that you want us to fight as soon as we meet and tear down the cave?" Tiange said, "You don't want to fight because you can't win, right?" Fei was easily defeated. It had to admit that it, who had just reached the 7th level, could not defeat Little Phoenix, who had transformed and had a pure bloodline. Xiao Feng smiled faintly and said, "There are almost no divine beasts left in this world. It's rare to find one of our kind, so why the need to fight and kill?" Since they could think that way, Tiange couldn't wait to see them fight like what Fei did when they first met. If that happened, would they still be able to live in the future? However, calling Fei back was not to let him drink tea. Tiange casually pulled him into the virtual sky world. "Enough with the idle talk. Enter closed-door meditation." "Hey, why should I go into closed-door training? It's not just you. Lil, Fire and Lil, Fan, go into seclusion and don't leave until you're at the 8th step." "Hey!" Tiange threw him into the cultivation room and said, "The world is in chaos and the world is changing. Are you going to cultivate or not?" Fei was stunned. "It's what the Lord Divine Beast you revere said." "Huh?" Fei was even more confused. Tiange was too lazy to explain to him. She went out and pulled Little Phoenix inside. "Explain to him." Then she went out. This cultivation technique is called the Pure Yang technique. It's a cultivation technique specially cultivated by people with pure Yang constitutions. I've seen your original cultivation technique. It's only ordinary and won't help your constitution. You'd better switch to this cultivation technique. Sang Yushu took the jade slip that slowly flew towards him. After reading it for a bit, he was shocked and immediately knelt down. Thank you, master, for your reward. Although his aptitude wasn't good, his vision was very accurate. This cultivation technique was very exquisite and could be considered the top cultivation technique in Xianxia school. If it was before, he wouldn't have been able to obtain this kind of cultivation technique in his entire life. Xianxia waved his hand and pointed at a small tray next to him. On it was a bag of spirit stones, several jade bottles, and a magic tool. This is prepared for you. Although the disciple's share is not small, your foundation is too poor and your aptitude isn't good, so it's far from enough. This is a year's worth of spirit stones and medicinal pills. It should be enough for you to cultivate for a year. As for this magic tool, it's something I obtained in the past. It can be used to attack and defend and has endless wonderful uses. Study it carefully. Yes, disciple obeys. Sang Yushu respectfully kowtowed. Xianxia nodded slightly. Remember the cultivation technique in your heart. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me again. Yes, disciple will take his leave. Sang Yushu kowtowed and left. Xianxia only accepted him as a disciple, so it was the simplest. Xianxia, on the other hand, was much busier. In the morning, she explained formations to Yi Wen and Shi Su. In the afternoon, she taught Xie Jingyi the art of engineering. Qi Yunshu's path was completely different from theirs, so she had to teach her separately. After being busy like this for a month, Yi Wen and Shi Su already understood all kinds of changes in the transporting formation. Xianxia gave them the Xuanji formation book and told them to study it on their own while preparing for the transporting formation. Lord Daoist Jinyang was very happy to learn that they could build a transporting formation. With the transporting formation, Xianxia school could attack and defend at will, and the possibility of preserving the sect would greatly increase. As for Xie Jingyi, he was a very serious and rigorous person. He almost had no hobbies and was also willing to endure boring tasks. When it came to learning the art of engineering, he was so focused that even Xianxia felt she was inferior to him. After spending several months teaching him the tricks of the art of engineering and leaving him a large amount of spirit stones to buy materials and a batch of crystal soul jades to experiment with, Xianxia finally let him study by himself. Of course, she didn't let him put aside his cultivation. She gave him the qualification to enter the ancient records room and let him choose a suitable cultivation technique for himself. As for Qi Yunshu, Xianxia spent even more time and energy on her. The art of Sunu was a cultivation technique created especially for pure Yin female cultivators. Although Qi Yunshu's constitution was close to Yin, she wasn't pure Yin, so she needed to be guided step by step. Sang Yushu was also like this, but Xianxia only had to take care of him, so it was much easier. Qi Yunshu was a taciturn but extremely decisive person. She realized her previous cultivation technique wasn't suitable for the art of Sunu, so she didn't hesitate to dissolve her previous techniques layer by layer and switch to practicing the art of Sunu. This made Xianxia very satisfied. The art of Sunu was a pure cultivation technique, so the person who practiced it also had to have a pure mind. In this way, a year passed. Qi Yunshu and Sang Yushu both entered the art of Sunu, so they could cultivate on their own. Their cultivation techniques were quite special. Before they entered closed-door meditation, Xianxia and Xianxia warned them to ask Lord Daoist Jinghe if they couldn't get pointers from the Dao Seeking Palace. As grandmasters, they should teach their grand disciples to the best of their abilities. The two of them were both surprised and delighted to be able to ask a great cultivator at the late nascent stage. After solving Qi Yunshu and Sang Yushu's problems and dealing with all the trivial matters, they officially entered the virtual sky world for closed-door meditation. Before that, Yi Zhenji and Shui Linbo were all in closed-door meditation. Feifei, Xiaohua, and Xiaofan were all focused on cultivating. Except for Xiaofeng, their whole family was in closed-door meditation. ***** in the virtual sky world's cultivation room. 4 jade slips floated between the two of them. Xianxia said, "I've thought about it. The problem of the pure yang technique isn't difficult to solve. My art of Sunu should have also been modified. The reason why I could cultivate in the virtual sky world so smoothly was because of the record of the primordial chaos. If I combine the art of Sunu and the record of the primordial chaos into the Sunu art of the origin, the problem of the art of Sunu's slow progress in the virtual sky world would be solved. Xianxia said thoughtfully. So, I can combine the pure yang technique and the art of 3 primordial cycles into one? Tiange nodded. Our cultivation levels weren't high enough before, but now that we're high enough and have a deeper understanding of the essence of cultivation techniques, it's a bit difficult for us, but it's not impossible. Then, what about the yin and yang dual cultivation technique? Tiange smiled. I practiced the Sunu art of the origin, and you practice the art of 3 primordial cycles, which is also 1 yin and 1 yang, so it's no different from the yin and yang dual cultivation technique. She thought about it and understood. So, we can also practice yin and yang dual cultivation by combining the Sunu art of the origin and the art of 3 primordial cycles with the art of 3 primordial cycles. Exactly. Tiange paused. Of course, this is just my speculation. Whether it's feasible or not, we'll have to try it first. Then let's try it. Xianxia did as he said. He reached out and took the jade slips of the pure yang technique and the art of 3 primordial cycles. His mind was immersed in them, and he began to study them step by step. In the Tiandao sect's branch in Kuanzhong City, an unknown secret discussion was taking place. Xianxia School has been making a lot of moves recently. What are they doing? Lu Dingyuan, who was sitting in the head seat, tapped the armrest lightly. He seemed to be talking to everyone, but also seemed to be talking to himself. Even a small aura-refining cultivator could see Tiandao sect's declining trend. Xianxia School's unstoppable rise was obvious to all cultivators in the celestial pole. For Tiandao sect's nascent soul cultivators, the most hateful thing was that this was happening right in front of their eyes, yet they couldn't stop it. A murderous intent flashed across Daoist Ji's eyes. If they want to stop without seeing any results, then we'll teach them a lesson. Lu Dingyuan cast a faint glance at him and said, How are you going to teach them a lesson? They're the same as us. 2 of them are in the late stage and 1 is in the middle stage. As a middle stage cultivator, isn't it natural for you to defeat several early stage cultivators? If we're talking about middle stage cultivators, are you sure you can defeat Qin Shoujing? Daoist Ji snorted. No matter how talented Qin Shoujing is, it's only been 100 years since he advanced to the nascent soul realm. The so-called middle stage nascent soul realm is only the result of Zhenyang Jinghe's forceful advancement. How powerful can he be? Junior martial brother Ji. Lu Dingyuan shouted heavily. Didn't you notice that Qin Shoujing was very different from before when he came back from Yunzhong this time? Daoist Ji was stunned. He narrowed his eyes and recalled the feeling he had when he saw Qianxia this time. Lu Dingyuan said, His aura was vigorous and solid, not much weaker than yours when you were in the middle stage of Junyan. Moreover, he had a sacred, vast, and destructive aura that could easily immobilize ordinary nascent soul cultivators. You and I both have to admit that Qin Shoujing is no longer the junior he used to be. Daoist Ji was speechless. Lu Dingyuan went on to say, No matter what Xianxia School is doing from the reports of our spies, there's no doubt that Xianxia School is working hard to improve its strength. They already have 8 nascent soul cultivators. Although Huayan is about to pass away, it won't be difficult for 1 or 2 nascent soul cultivators to appear in the next 200 or 300 years. If we're not careful and the number of nascent soul cultivators they have exceeds 2 digits, it'll be very difficult for us to rise again. Everyone was speechless. Junior martial brother speechless. Lu Dingyuan suddenly turned to Lord Daoist speechless and said, You and junior martial brother Ji should go back to the sect. Take charge of the sect and focus on cultivating disciples. Lord Daoist's speechless eyes flashed. What about here? Sighing, Lu Dingyuan suddenly felt like he had aged. Supporting such a huge sect was simply too exhausting. We can only put aside the power of the Immortal Alliance. Tiandao sect is our foundation. Chapter 625. The 4 nascent soul realm cultivators of the Biyun sect were also having a secret discussion. In addition to the Luan Feng immortal couple, The Biyun sect also had Feng Ning and Qin Lan, two early-stage nascent soul cultivators. There was no need to talk about Feng Ning. With the strongest nascent soul couple in the celestial pole as her parents, it was only natural for her to form her nascent soul. Qin Lan, on the other hand, fought her way out from the low-level cultivators of the Biyun sect. She has ordinary aptitude and is a little older than Feng Ning. She has advanced to the realm of nascent soul earlier than Feng Ning. She is the junior that Luan and Feng Ning rely on very much, and they believe that she will be the next chief. Feng Ning's character is not good enough. If she wants to be the chief, she will offend everyone. Ding Wan said, Xianxia school will definitely make a big move and we can't stop it. After all, we're not Tiandao sect, so we don't need to fight for the title of the number one sect. What we need to think about is how we should deal with Xianxia school next. Are you close or distant? Qin Lan thought for a while and said, I think it's better to get closer to him. Qin Lan said slowly, our school spies reported that Xianxia school obtained a group of Feifei in the Eastern Sea. These beasts are extremely good at finding treasures. Right now, groups of Xianxia school disciples are leaving the school with Feifei and wandering around everywhere. They're definitely looking for resources to improve their strength. As for the nascent soul lord Daoists in Xianxia school, needless to say, the three youngest ones are the most talented cultivators in recent years. It's very likely that they'll advance to the middle stage or even the late stage. With resources and manpower, Xianxia school's rise will be unstoppable. There's no harm in getting closer to them. Ding Wan and Feng Xiao could not help but nod. Xianxia school had always been upright and peaceful. It had strict school rules and had a good relationship with other cultivation groups. The nascent soul lord Daoists of Xianxia school were also very good friends with the husband and wife. Similar secret discussions took place in various large sections. They could all see that the Xianxia school would rise strongly, but they all underestimated the extent of this strength. In the next few decades, Xianxia school's rising momentum could be said to be world-shaking. First of all, the number of core formation cultivators in Xianxia school increased explosively. Every few years, someone would form his or her gold core. In just a few decades, the number of core formation cultivators in Xianxia school had climbed to 50. This might not be strange in Yunzhong, but in the celestial pole, it was unprecedented. When the number of core formation cultivators rose to a certain level, nascent soul cultivators would appear. This was a well-known principle in the cultivation world. Right now, they already understood that the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianxia school definitely wouldn't stop at 8. This kind of rising momentum scared many cultivation groups, especially Tiandao sect. However, no matter what they did, they couldn't stop Xianxia school from growing stronger. In the third year of their closed-door meditation, Immortal and Xianxia completely fused the 4 cultivation techniques together and created a new cultivation technique. This cultivation technique focused on dual cultivation and was completely in line with their own characteristics, allowing them to achieve twice the result with half the effort. They still called this cultivation technique the yin-yang dual cultivation technique, but the inside was completely different. After creating the cultivation technique, the two of them temporarily came out of seclusion to guide their disciples. Yi Wen and Shisu's attainments in array formations became more and more profound. They had already grasped the basics of the Xuanji array book. Of the two of them, one was experienced and knew how to be flexible, while the other was stubborn, but they reached the same goal by different means, and each had their own advantages in using the Xuanji formation book. Xie Jingyi, on the other hand, had the least to worry about. He had a very tenacious spirit, so he could disregard all distractions and focus on his own matters. In the past 3 years, he had thoroughly grasped the art of engineering in this realm. His foundation was even more solid than Emotienga's. After discovering this, Emotienga asked him to focus his energy on cultivating. Although he could also build core formation mechanisms without advancing to the core formation realm, the difficulty of doing so would be 10 times harder than advancing to the core formation realm on his own. As for nascent soul mechanisms, he had no way of doing so. Only when he advanced to the core formation realm could his understanding of spiritual aura reach a new realm. Mo Tiange hoped that even if Xie Jingyi couldn't form his nascent soul, he could at least advance to the core formation realm. Only then could he create nascent soul realm mechanical puppets and truly pass on the art of engineering. Fortunately, Xie Jingyi was very obedient. He immediately picked up the cultivation he had abandoned and began to cultivate without eating or sleeping. Mo Tiange discovered one of his shortcomings: he could only focus on one thing at a time. However, this wasn't a big problem. When Xie Jingyi advanced to the core formation realm, he could focus on the art of engineering. Then there were Qi Yunshu and Sang Yushu. Their characters were actually somewhat similar. They were both persistent and tenacious people. They handled things very decisively and didn't hesitate to do what they had to do. However, the two of them were different. Qi Yunshu was taciturn while Sang Yushu was reserved. In the past 3 years, the two of them had cultivated their respective cultivation techniques to a high level. Sang Yushu, in particular, had been stuck in the early stage of the foundation building realm for more than 50 years. He had accumulated a lot of experience and obtained a suitable cultivation technique. Unexpectedly, he advanced by leaps and bounds, easily breaking through the bottleneck and reaching the middle stage of the foundation building realm. Although She gave him a lot of medicinal pills and spirit stones, his spiritual roots really weren't very good. To be able to achieve this kind of achievement, he must have been extremely diligent and didn't slack off in the slightest. Qi Yunshu was slightly worse. First, she had just built her foundation not long ago, so she basically didn't have any experience. Second, she was different from Sang Yushu. Her original cultivation technique had been erased. Now that she was cultivating it again, it would take her at least 10 years. From this, Qi Yunshu's determination could be seen. Even if she had to spend more than 10 years, she didn't hesitate to erase her cultivation technique after confirming it was useless. In addition, there was another piece of news: Yi Zhenji failed to form his gold core. The two of them had long been prepared for this, so they didn't feel disappointed. As long as he knew how to summarize, it was fine. He would eventually succeed in forming his gold core. After giving guidance to his disciple, they went to Shangqing Palace to pay a visit to Lord Daoist Jinghe. Lord Daoist Jinghe looked at their newly comprehended yin and yang dual cultivation technique and clicked his tongue in praise, expressing that he couldn't do any better. Later, Lord Daoist Jinghe told them that everything had been normal for the past 3 years and that the war had even relaxed a bit. After all, fighting consumed a lot of energy. It was the same for the righteous path, the devil path, and even the beast cultivators. They couldn't keep fighting at a high intensity all the time, so they had to relax appropriately to continue. This also showed that the so-called great chaos in the world might not come yet, so they had more time to prepare. After learning this news, the two of them went back to their closed-door meditation. This time, their closed-door meditation might take 10 years or even dozens of years. Inside the virtual sky world's cultivation room, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were sitting opposite each other. Both of them were meditating with their eyes closed. First, they adjusted their breaths, then their steps gradually became identical. In the end, the two of them breathed in and out together, rising and falling together as if they were one. As they breathed, pure yang spiritual aura and yin spiritual aura slowly spread out from their bodies until they condensed into one. Yang spiritual aura and yin spiritual aura intertwined, blended, and nourished each other, slowly growing stronger. However, their yin and yang spiritual aura contained a lot of personal things, such as the aura of the origin, the light of 3 elements, and the divine beast's breath. Qin Shi's vermilion bird's breath had already merged with the spiritual aura in his body. His yang spiritual aura contained the vermilion bird's breath. Mo Tiange's azure dragon's breath was more obscure, but under the guidance of the vermilion bird's breath, it also spread out. The moment the vermilion bird's breath and the azure dragon's breath touched, something suddenly shone brightly, illuminating the whole virtual sky world and alarming the 3 spiritual beasts inside. The divine beast's breath, Fei Fei, who inherited the white tiger's breath, was the keenest. He immediately recognized that this was the breath of a divine beast. It was neither the azure dragon nor the vermilion bird, but a qilin. How could there be a qilin's breath? He looked at Imo Tienga's cultivation room hesitantly, but in the end, he didn't disturb them. When that light shone, the spiritual aura on Imo Tienga's and Xianxia's bodies seemed to be pulled by something and surged towards the source of the light. The two of them opened their eyes in surprise and found a small thing floating between them. It was this thing that emitted a powerful momentum. "What's this?" Imo Tienga asked in surprise. Xianxia was confused at first, then puzzled, but soon, realization dawned on him. "It's the Qilin bone. That piece of Qilin bone." Imo Tienga's thoughts turned and she immediately thought of the Qilin bone in Hu Po's Six Paths Palace. She asked, "Wasn't it taken away by Senior Hupa?" Xianxia said, "After Hupa passed away, this piece of Qilin bone didn't scatter with the wind, but it seemed to have lost all its spiritual aura and became dim and lightless, so they ignored it. I picked it up casually." Lost its spiritual aura? Imo Tienga stared at the piece of Qilin bone. How does this look like it's lost its spiritual aura? The Qilin bones suddenly stopped absorbing their spiritual aura. With a flash of light, a strong Qilin's aura surged out and poured towards them. Oh! The two of them turned pale with fright. However, under the suppression of the Qilin's aura, they couldn't move and could only watch helplessly as the Qilin's aura poured into their meridians. Pain. This was the first thing Imo Tienga felt. Her meridians felt like they were being torn into a mess, and she couldn't suppress the pain. She remembered Master Daoist Yuanmu and Ling Yunhe's situation in the Vermilion Bird's sacrificial temple. Could it be that she also had to go through that? She glanced at Xianxia, hoping his yang spiritual bead could help again. Xianxia understood what she meant and immediately stimulated his yang spiritual bead. A faint red light shone in his dantian. The Qilin's aura paused for a moment, then rushed towards the yang spiritual bead. During this process, Xianxia was also in unbearable pain. However, his meridians had experienced the Vermilion Bird's aura, so it wasn't particularly unbearable. This process lasted for half a day. Most of the Qilin's aura rushed towards the yang spiritual bead, while a small part was still poured into Imo Tienga. However, with the yang spiritual bead sharing the burden, she wasn't in too much pain. "Why did it just focus on me?" Imo Tienga said while clenching her teeth. Xianxia revealed a smile amidst the pain. "I don't have an earth-type spiritual root." Imo Tienga was stunned, but she immediately understood. She had the spiritual root of the origin, so any kind of divine beast's aura could exist in her body. Xianxia didn't have an earth-type spiritual root, so the earth-type Qilin ignored him. Just as she slowly couldn't bear it anymore, the Qilin's aura gradually weakened, and the Qilin bone's light also gradually dimmed until it lost all its luster and fell down. The two of them finally regained their freedom and gasped for breath. Imo Tienga wanted to say something, but her meridians that were almost torn just now were in great pain. Not only did she choke on her words, but she also choked on her tears. Xianxia didn't absorb the Qilin's aura, so he didn't suffer as much as she did. He hastily reached out to support her. What's going on? Could it be that Amber's divine beast's aura is all in this Qilin bone? Xianxia also didn't know, but it seemed to be the case. Imo Tienga really couldn't sit still anymore. She lay down and said, "This won't do. My meridians hurt, and my dantian is too swollen. I have to absorb this Qilin's aura." Xianxia felt a bit helpless, but when he thought about it, he also felt it was funny. They'd racked their brains to create a new yin and yang dual cultivation technique, but they actually encountered this kind of thing the first time they practiced it. Who knew that the Qilin bone that had lost its spiritual aura would actually absorb Amber's Qilin's aura? "It's okay. I'll help you. You can use my body to slowly absorb it." Xianxia helped her up. "Continue cultivating. Send the excess Qilin's aura to me and focus on absorbing a part of it." Imo Tienga endured the pain, nodded, and closed her eyes to cultivate. Chapter 626. This absorption actually took 10 years. This was something Imo Tienga didn't expect. She originally thought a few months like Xianxia was enough. After thinking about it carefully, she felt it was reasonable. Xianxia's cultivation technique was compatible with the Vermilion Bird's breath, so it was relatively easy for him to absorb it. As for her, she had never cultivated an earth attribute cultivation technique before. Although the spiritual roots of the origin and the art of the origin didn't reject it, it was difficult for her to fuse with it. Moreover, she absorbed more Qilin's breath than Qin Shi's vermilion bird's breath. With the yang spiritual bead, when he found it difficult to absorb, the vermilion bird's breath would automatically be stored in the yang spiritual bead, but she didn't, so she could only rely on herself to refine it bit by bit. Boom! After absorbing it to the extreme, Emotienga only felt that all the meridians in her body were torn, and her dantian was in intense pain. In this pain, her meridians and dantian were forcibly widened, and the Qilin's breath spread inch by inch until her whole body was filled again. This painful feeling lasted for a very, very long time. 10 years later, the Qilin's breath was finally completely absorbed, and the two of them stopped cultivating. Qin Shi also benefited a lot from helping her cultivate. During the fusion process, the Yin's spiritual aura and the aura of the origin in her body nourished his meridians, making the spiritual aura all over his body even purer. After withdrawing his spiritual aura, Qin Shi raised his head to look at Emotienga, but the next moment, he was shocked. "You broke through." After a long time, Emotienga finally calmed down. She looked at herself and felt her dantian, then said with great surprise, "I'm in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm?" This breakthrough was completely unexpected and unbelievably smooth. Even she didn't dare to believe it was true. "Qin," she said with half envy and half joy, "how did you make a realm breakthrough so easily?" "When I advanced to the middle stage, not only did I spend 50 years cultivating nonstop, but I also had to rely on the 10,000-year-old spiritual fruit you left, as well as senior martial brother Xianyang and masters helped to break through to the middle stage. But because of this, I had some sequelae and my cultivation level wasn't stable." He looked at her carefully for a while and said, "Your spiritual aura is very thick, but your realm isn't very stable yet. After a few more years of seclusion, you'll be able to stabilize at the middle stage." Emotienga finally felt real. She said happily, "That's all thanks to that senior Hupo. Who would have thought that his Qilin's breath didn't disperse but remained in that Qilin bone? In addition, it's also thanks to you. If you hadn't picked it up in passing, I wouldn't have had a fated chance like I did. If I wanted to advance to the middle stage, it would have taken me at least several dozen years." Qin Shi nodded with a smile. It could be said that Emotienga's realm breakthrough this time was a trick. But because of her cultivation technique and spiritual roots, and because she had him by her side to share the pain and nourish her body, she passed through this hurdle very smoothly. Compared to other people's realm breakthroughs, there wasn't much difference. "Should I continue my seclusion?" Qin Shi didn't hesitate at all. "It won't be too late to leave closed-door meditation after you stabilize your realm." The two of them began to cultivate again. This time, they finally succeeded in dual cultivation. The yin-yang dual cultivation technique circulated between the two of them, nourishing and blending with each other. Time flew by. Another 5 years passed. Emotienga's realm finally stabilized, and Qin Shi also made great progress. The two of them decided to leave closed-door meditation. 15 years had passed, but the cave was still the same as before. There wasn't a single person in the hall. Emotienga spread her divine sense and saw that all the disciples were cultivating. Xiaoguzi and Xiaozue seemed to be eating barbecue by the extreme abyss pool again. These 15 years were the most delightful for them. Their master was in closed-door meditation, so they didn't interact with others. The disciples were also very independent and basically didn't order them around. They only needed to take care of the medicinal fields and spiritual plants and tidy up the collection room. They were so idle that they almost laid eggs. Emotienga and Qin Shi didn't mind. As long as they didn't delay their business, they wouldn't interfere with what they did during other times. After the sound-transmitting talisman was sent out, Xiaoguzi and Xiaozue immediately cleaned up the barbecue and came in. "Grandmasters, you finished your closed-door meditation," Xiaoguzi said with a smile. Qin Shi nodded slightly and sat down on the host's seat. "Go and call them over." "Martial uncles?" Xiaoguzi said. I'll go right away. Right after he said that, he and Xiaozue went to call them over. After learning that their master had finished his closed-door meditation, the 4 disciples who stayed in the cave all put aside their own business and came to pay their respects. Yiwen and Shi Su weren't in the cave. After they received Mo Tianga's formation inheritance, they had been busy with the sect, building transporting formations and teaching formation masters. Now, they were indispensable figures in the sect. After Sang Yushu broke through to the middle stage, she traveled for several years and gained a lot. When she came back, she stayed in the wooden house in the extreme abyss pool, watching the waterfall every day and thinking about her Dao. Xie Jingyi and Qi Yunshu had been cultivating. Their foundations were weak, so it was time for them to accumulate experience and not for them to travel. Shui Linbo, after several years of closed-door meditation, successfully cultivated to the peak stage of the foundation-building realm. Now, she was settling her mood and preparing to go out to find an opportunity to form her gold core. As for Yi Zhenji, they finally heard good news. After failing to form his gold core, he threw himself into Xianxia School's affairs, honed his patience, went out to travel, and finally succeeded in forming his gold core not long ago. However, after stabilizing his realm, he left the school and went to Demonic Mountain. Mo Tianga was very pleased. Whether or not he could form his nascent soul in the future, Zhenji finally embarked on his own Dao. Her promise to second uncle could be considered fulfilled. After Zhenji formed his gold core, it would be his responsibility to train the descendants of the Yi family and support the Yi family. When the 4 disciples gathered, Shui Linbo was the first to notice something was wrong. She looked at Mo Tianga for a while and said in surprise, "Auntie, you made a realm breakthrough?" Foundation-building cultivators couldn't clearly feel the realm of nascent soul cultivators and could only judge by their spiritual aura. Shui Linbo had been with her for a long time, so she was the first to notice it. Mo Tianga nodded with a smile. "I was lucky to break through to the middle stage." The 4 disciples were so surprised that they couldn't speak. They all knew Mo Tianga's age. This year, she was only 208 years old, right? It was said that the youngest person to form their nascent soul in the celestial pole was 206 years old, but she actually reached the middle stage of the nascent soul realm at 208 years old. After the initial shock, the 4 disciples knelt down and said, "Congratulations to Master's wife, Auntie, for advancing to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm." Mo Tianga nodded slightly. "I've received your kind intentions. Get up." The 4 disciples stood up and waited respectfully at the side. They knew that it was time to check their cultivation progress. The 2 of them asked them one by one and were very satisfied with their cultivation progress. Then they gave them pointers and answered their cultivation problems one by one. After receiving their pointers, Sang Yushu and Qi Yunshu were suddenly enlightened in many areas. Even with Lord Daoist Jinghe's pointers, he hadn't practiced these 2 cultivation techniques, so some things could only be understood by those who had experienced it themselves. After asking about their current situation and giving pointers on their cultivation, the 2 of them dismissed the disciples and prepared to go out to meet their master. All these years, Lord Daoist Jinghe had stayed in the sect and hadn't taken a step out of Mount Taikong for more than 10 years. Because there was a great cultivator in the late stage of the nascent soul realm who personally trained the disciples, the new disciples of Xianxia School were very outstanding in the past 10 years. A few years ago, because of Mo Tianga's batch of materials, many cultivators with rich accumulation had an opportunity. For a time, there were disciples advancing to the core formation realm every year. In the next few years, the momentum of core formation slowed down, but on average, it was still very gratifying. As for those Feifei, their situation was also very good. They found a lot of materials, including veins, spiritual plants, and spirit stones, which were just enough to ensure the supply of materials for low-level disciples. When they arrived at Shangqing Palace, Lord Daoist Jinghe's voice was already heard without the disciple on guard duty. The 2 brats finally came out of closed-door meditation. The 2 of them entered Shangqing Palace and saluted their master. "Oh!" Lord Daoist Jinghe looked around with rapt attention and suddenly found something was wrong. his gaze fixed on Imotienga, and he stared at her with great astonishment. "You're in the middle stage?" Imotienga smiled and saluted him. "I have to thank Master for your teaching." "Bullshit." Lord Daoist Jinghe jumped down from the dragon chair. "When did I teach you? You're provoking me." Imotienga thought in her heart. "Master, don't you understand? Middle stage? What's 200 this year?" 208, Xianxia reminded him. "Oh, 208. Lord Daoist Jinghe paced around angrily. 208, 208 ah. I'm actually in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Think about me, your master. Although my aptitude is outstanding and I'm smarter than most people in the celestial pole, I didn't form my nascent soul until I was 400 years old because of bad luck. I advanced to the middle stage when I was almost 600 years old." "But why?" Facing Lord Daoist Jinghe, who was in a rage, the two of them retreated several steps. She said cautiously, "Master, Tienga is your disciple. Shouldn't you be very happy that she's in the middle stage?" "Happy? I'm very happy." Lord Daoist Jinghe waved his hand with a dark expression. "I'll inform old man Jinyang to hold your nascent soul ceremony." "Huh?" Imotienga was puzzled. "Master, I didn't hold it when I was forming my nascent soul. Why do I have to hold it now?" Lord Daoist Jinghe said, "I should have held it for you long ago, but I didn't have time. You've been in closed-door meditation for more than 10 years. Now that you've advanced to the middle stage, it's a good time to hold it again." He chuckled, his gaze fierce and his smile ferocious. "Lu Dingyuan and old man Song Feng, you must be scared to death now, right? Even I, your master, am scared." After a long time, Lord Daoist Jinghe, who was in a rage, finally calmed down. He heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the dragon throne. He said, "Tell me, how did you reach the middle stage? Logically speaking, you should have needed at least several decades to accumulate your strength. Also, how's your dual cultivation going?" Imotienga then told him everything about her closed-door meditation in the past dozen years, from her first dual cultivation technique to the Qilin bone, to the reverse control of Qilin's breath, to the absorption of Qilin's breath, to breaking through to the middle stage in one fell swoop, and then spending 5 years to stabilize her realm. As Lord Daoist Jinghe listened, his eyes widened again. 5 years? Doesn't that mean you'll be in the middle stage when you're 203 years old? Imotienga glanced at him, then answered in a low-key manner, "Yes." Lord Daoist Jinghe once again went berserk. After he was done, he smiled again, patted her shoulder and said, "Good disciple, you really made Master proud." Imotienga was a bit suspicious that her master had gone insane because of her stimulation. Chapter 627. When Lord Daoist Zhenyang in Kuanzhong City received the news, he immediately replied. The nascent soul ceremony must be held, and it had to be grand and glorious. Based on the current situation, Xianxia School had already become the indisputable #1 cultivation group in the Celestial Pole, so it was time for them to declare their strength. As long as Imotienga's nascent soul ceremony was held, the Celestial Pole would be shaken. From then on, the Celestial Pole would belong to Xianxia School. Less than half a month later, Xianxia School once again sent news that Lord Daoist Huayan had advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Lord Daoist Zhenyang was overjoyed. With a wave of his writing brush, Imotienga's nascent soul ceremony became Qingwei's nascent soul ceremony and Huayan's middle stage celebration. Although the invitations hadn't been sent out yet, this matter quickly spread throughout the Celestial Pole. In the Tiandao sect's branch courtyard, Lu Dingyuan and Daoist He Feng sat opposite each other in silence. Both Dao Lord Speechless and Daoist Ji stayed in their sects and hadn't set foot in Kuanzhong City for more than 10 years. These past few years, Tiandao sect had been very diligent in training its disciples, and the results were very obvious. There were already a few disciples who had reached the peak stage of the core formation realm and had a chance to advance to the nascent soul realm. However, the birth of a nascent soul cultivator was not so simple. It was possible that it would happen decades from now. At this critical juncture, Xianxia School's Hua Yan and Lord Daoist Qingwei unexpectedly advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm at the same time. They even sent invitations, preparing to hold a soul formation ceremony for Mo Qingwei. They all knew this was Xianxia School declaring its hegemony status in the celestial pole. But what could they do? Without sufficient strength, one would not have the qualifications to challenge them. They must have had other fortuitous encounters over the years. Lu Dingyuan sat on the host's seat and said slowly, Hua Yan's lifespan is approaching its end, but he still went into seclusion to break through to the middle stage. He must have obtained something to extend his lifespan. Daoist Black Wind's entire body was wrapped in black clothing, revealing only his zombie-like face. He said, Hua Yan's lifespan was originally around 200 years. If his lifespan was extended, it would be around 300 years. If he advanced to the middle stage, it would be more than 500 years. A cultivator with a lifespan of more than 500 years couldn't be said to have reached the end of his lifespan. He still had a long time to work for the sect. Unexpectedly, Lord Daoist Huayan, whom they had thought to be the least of their concerns, had turned the tables and become the focus of their attention. There's also Mo Qingwei. Lu Dingyuan frowned. No matter how I think about it, I can't figure it out. How did she advance to the middle stage? How old was she? So what if his aptitude was outstanding? Was there a shortage of talented cultivators in the celestial pole? Not only did she break the nascent soul record, but she also advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm in more than 20 years. Xianxia School must have obtained an enormous fated chance. It's a pity we didn't attract any attention at that time. If he had paid more attention to it at that time, he might have been able to discover this point. If he had taken advantage of that opportunity to cause trouble or steal from the Tiandao sect, he might have had a chance to turn things around. But what about now? Lu Dingyuan felt extremely exhausted. He had already given up on fighting with Xianxia School for the time being. Now that things had come to this, he could only hide his strength and bide his time to plan for the future. Similar conversations were taking place in other cultivation groups. However, they were all glad that they chose to be closer to Xianxia School. Now that Xianxia School was on the rise, as long as they didn't stand on the wrong side, they wouldn't be affected. Not long after the news spread out, Xianxia School sent out invitations one after another. This time, not only did all the big cultivation groups receive invitations, but even small cultivation groups and individual cultivators in the core formation realm and above received invitations. Xianxia School also announced that there were many cultivation groups in the celestial pole. If any newly established cultivation group didn't receive an invitation, please forgive them. For this celebration, no matter what identity or cultivation level, everyone who came to celebrate was welcome. Lord Daoist Jinghe also sent an invitation to Master Song Feng on Mount Lang II in the far west. As for whether he would come or not, it didn't matter. It was fine as long as he saw it and felt disgusted. For a time, the celestial pole was shaken. Small cultivation groups and low-level individual cultivators cheered thunderously. Many cultivators traveled day and night to Mount Taikong, intending to participate in this grand event together. Xianxia School's market square and guest courtyards on the mountainside were all open to the public. For a time, people came and went, jostling each other's shoulders. All the shops made a lot of money. The shops near Xianxia School also made a lot of money. Because there were too many cultivators, all the guest courtyards were full. Tents were set up everywhere at the foot of Mount Taikong. These shops rented tents, so their business was very good. 3 months later, even low-level cultivators who walked slowly gathered on Mount Taikong. The soul formation ceremony, which was also the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, was finally held. 2 days before the ceremony, Xianxia School opened its main gate. Except for the school's important places, everything was open to guests. Immediately, many cultivators poured in. People came and went everywhere in Xianxia School like a market. Of course, these places didn't include the Immortal's caves of the nascent soul cultivators. Extreme Abyss Valley was still quiet, but from time to time, People climbed to the peak to see the scenery of the nascent soul cultivators' Immortal's caves. The layout of Extreme Abyss Valley and the mechanical eagles made them exclaim in admiration, and they were even more in awe of the nascent soul cultivators. On the day of the soul formation ceremony, the huge square on the main peak of Xianxia School was densely packed with cultivators. For those who couldn't stand, several nascent soul lord Daoists worked together to cast a mysterious technique and set up floating cloud platforms in the middle of the square. This greatly broadened the horizons of many low-level cultivators. This kind of mysterious technique couldn't be cast by non-nascent soul cultivators, so they might only be able to see it once in their lives. When the time came, Luo Fengxue, wearing a crane cloak and a hibiscus crown, walked out in a dignified and calm manner and stood in front of the tens of thousands of cultivators. Fellow Daoists, today is the day of Lord Daoist Qingwei's soul formation ceremony and the celebration of Lord Daoist Huayan's advancement to the middle stage. Many of you have traveled thousands of miles to come here. I'm Bing Xan, the current sect head of Xianxia School. On behalf of all the disciples of Xianxia School, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you and welcome all of you. After she finished speaking, she bowed. Many cultivators in the square, regardless of their cultivation levels, returned her salute. Luo Fengxue stood up straight again. Her eyes were calm and without a trace of nervousness. Now, I announce the start of the soul formation ceremony. Lord Daoist Xianxia, the head Grand Supreme Elder, please preside over it. At this moment, all the nascent soul Lord Daoists stood in front of the great hall of the Three Pure Ones. All of them wore tall crowns and feathered robes, looking sage-like and imposing. As soon as Luo Fengxue finished speaking, Lord Daoist Xianxia, who stood in the first place, walked out. Luo Fengxue stepped aside and he stepped forward. Fellow Daoists and disciples, I'm very honored to be standing here today. Before today, I never thought there would be a soul formation ceremony like this. My sect's disciple, Qingwei, formed her nascent soul when she was only 180 years old. Now, at the age of 208, she broke through the early stage and became a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. I'm very excited to stand here. I hope my sect's disciples will follow Qingwei's example and persevere in pursuing the path of immortality. His impassioned speech made the blood of Xianxia School's disciples boil and made other cultivators revere Xianxia School's strength even more. Now, Qingwei, please come forward. Once Lord Daoist Xianxia finished speaking, everyone's eyes were focused on the end of the square not far away. A person stood under the gate. She wore a Taiji crown, a Taiji Daoist robe, a pair of 8 trigram shoes, and an immortal crane feather robe. She looked graceful and elegant, as beautiful as snow. Under the protection of Xianxia School's disciples on both sides, she slowly passed through the crowd and walked towards the great hall of the Three Pure Ones. There was a sudden commotion in the crowd. Many people shouted, "Look, that's Lord Daoist Qingwei." Someone looked at her and couldn't help but say, "She's really young." Someone sneered at the person in front of him. Nascent soul cultivators must be young. How can you tell from their appearance? Look at Senior Ding Wan from Biyun sect and that Lord Daoist Miaoyi. Aren't they both in their 20s? The person in front of him flew into a rage out of humiliation. If you can't tell, don't tell other people can't. Oh, then may I ask how you can tell? How can I tell? Why should I tell you? Asterisk, 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 all the noise stopped when Imo walked into the great hall of the Three Pure Ones. Lord Daoist Xianxia looked at her with a smile and led her into the hall. She knelt and kowtowed to the patriarch, saying, "My sect's disciple, Qingwei, formed her nascent soul at the age of 180 and broke through to the middle stage at the age of 208. Imo Tiange respectfully kowtowed to the patriarch's statue, kneeling 3 times and kowtowing 9 times. She didn't relax even for a moment. After kneeling, she stood up and bowed deeply to Lord Daoist Xianxia. Disciple Qingwei formed her nascent soul and advanced to the middle stage. I'll never forget the sect's great kindness. For the rest of my life, I'll do my best to care for disciples and support the sect. Lord Daoist Xianxia nodded with a smile. I'm deeply gratified that you have such thoughts. He then led her out of the hall again and kowtowed to his master. This was already the third time Lord Daoist Jinghe was kowtowed to by a disciple in the nascent soul ceremony. He was immensely proud of himself, but he didn't show it on his face. His expression was still solemn and his attitude was calm. Disciple Qingwei was able to form her nascent soul and advance to the middle stage today because of Master's 100 years of care. I hereby kowtow to thank Master for his kindness. Please reprimand me, Master. Lord Daoist Jinghe smiled and looked kindly at Imo Tienge, who was kneeling in front of him. He said, "My disciple, Qingwei, you're talented, smart, and successful at a young age. It's rare for you to have a peaceful mind and be upright. For more than 100 years, I've seen you diligently and tirelessly, and I'm very gratified. Now that you've set foot on the great Tao, I have nothing to reprimand you. I only have one sentence for you. If you can persevere, you'll have a chance to reach the great Tao." Imo Tienge kowtowed. "Thank you for your words, Master. Without Master, Qingwei wouldn't be where I am today. Qingwei will never forget Master's great kindness. Qingwei will certainly keep these words in mind and reflect on myself from time to time. I'll live up to Master's painstaking efforts." Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded with gratification and said with a pleasant expression, "Since you've reached the nascent soul realm, you can set up your own sect. From now on, keep the relationship between master and disciple in your heart. You don't need to call me master or kowtow to anyone." "Yes, disciple will obey master's order," Imo Tienge said solemnly. Lord Daoist Jinyang stepped forward. "Thank you, Master. Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, please rise." Imo Tienge stood up and returned to the line of nascent soul Lord Daoists with Lord Daoist Jinghe. Lord Daoist Jinyang faced the crowd again. "Fellow Daoists, this is both Lord Daoist Qingwei's nascent soul ceremony and Lord Daoist Huayan's celebration for reaching the middle stage. Although Lord Daoist Huayan isn't famous, he's indispensable to our sect. Over the years, Lord Daoist Huayan has contributed a lot to the sect, so his cultivation level has fallen behind, but he persisted and finally advanced to the middle stage a few months ago. On the path of cultivation, a genius cultivator like Lord Daoist Qingwei certainly shines, but what's more important is someone like Lord Daoist Huayan who always perseveres and never gives up." After that, he invited Lord Daoist Huayan to kneel and kowtow to the patriarch to encourage him. In the end, Lord Daoist Jinyang announced that he was inviting everyone to a banquet, marking the end of the nascent soul ceremony. Imo Tienge breathed a sigh of relief. She was low-key by nature, so she wouldn't hold a nascent soul ceremony if she could avoid it. However, this ceremony was of great significance to Xianxia school, so she still braced herself to deal with it. Other Lord Daoists who were good at communication would handle the rest of the banquet, so she could go back now. But at that moment, Luo Fengxue stopped her and said, "Martial Uncle Qingwei, you have a guest." Chapter 628. My guest. Imo Tienge felt strange. She didn't have many friends and most of them were in the sect. "Who is it?" Luo Fengxue answered. "He's an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. His surname is Ling, surname Ling." Imo Tienge suddenly thought of a name and said, "Take me to him." Luo Fengxue nodded and led her to the side hall on the main peak. Before she entered the side hall, she saw a tall and straight man with his hands behind his back. He seemed to be admiring the statue of the Lord of Tao in the side hall. The moment she stepped into the side hall, the man turned around. His hair was tied in a bun, his face was handsome, and he wore an apricot-colored Daoist robe that flowed freely like flowing clouds. "Fellow Daoist Imo, long time no see." Upon seeing her, the man showed a gentle, elegant, and perfect smile. It was Ling Yunhe, whom she hadn't seen in Yunzhong for many years. "Fellow Daoist Ling?" Imo Tienge was surprised. "We haven't seen each other for many years. How are you?" "I'm doing okay." Ling Yunhe's gaze fell on her with a complicated expression. "Oh, I haven't congratulated fellow Daoist for advancing to the middle stage. I'm very happy that I came here just in time for this grand event. It's just a small gift to show my respect." Just take it as a congratulatory gift for your soul formation ceremony. He stretched out his hand and a delicate jade box appeared in his hand, flying towards her. Tiange took it and bowed. Thank you. Fellow Daoist Ling is too polite. Ling Yunhe smiled. I didn't expect fellow Daoist Mo to not only form her nascent soul but also advance to the middle stage in one fell swoop in just a little more than 50 years. I'm really ashamed of my inferiority. Tiange said, didn't fellow Daoist also advance to the middle stage in one fell swoop? This time, I advanced to the middle stage by chance and took advantage of it, so it's not real. A breakthrough is a breakthrough. Isn't fated chance also a form of strength? Fellow Daoist Mo, why are you being so modest? Ling Yunhe kept a smile on his face, but it was so perfect that it seemed fake. Tiange thought about how he suffered the pain of the vermilion bird's breath invading his body back then. His sect plotted for thousands of years, but she took advantage of it. It was already rare that he could still talk and laugh with her now, so she pretended not to know. Fellow Daoist Ling, why did you come to the celestial pole? Tiange pointed at the chair next to her. Please sit. After the two of them sat down, Ling Yunhe answered, I came to the celestial pole this time to take a look and also to pass on a message to fellow Daoist Mo. I just didn't expect that I would coincidentally run into fellow Daoist's soul formation ceremony. Tiange asked, may I know what kind of letter it was? Ling Yunhe said, it's just a message. Someone asked me to bring a message to fellow Daoist Mo. He paused for a moment then said, the sacrificial temple has appeared. Come quickly. All of a sudden, Tiange's expression turned grave. She stared at Ling Yunhe and asked, who's the messenger? Ling Yunhe said calmly, it's fellow Daoist Tianken. Tiange was confused. Fellow Daoist Tian, why didn't you come yourself? Are you being held up by something? Ling Yunhe nodded slowly. He is entangled by Moon Shadow Demon Lord and can't leave now. If I didn't happen to pass by, he wouldn't have asked me to bring the message. This explained the whole story. Nie Wuxiang, who went by the pseudonym Tian, only had a mediocre friendship with Ling Yunhe. Asking him to bring a message was a bit strange in itself, let alone a message. Tiange nodded. Thank you, fellow Daoist Ling. May I know when you'll return to Yunzhong? I'll return soon, Ling Yunhe said, I'm just taking a look around. Earlier he said he came to the celestial pole to take a look and conveniently deliver a message, but now he said he was just taking a look around. Upon hearing that, Tiange immediately knew he came to deliver a message to her. However, she had a grudge against Juyen's sect, so she couldn't say it out loud. Tiange solemnly cupped her hands and saluted Ling Yunhe. Thank you, fellow Daoist Ling. If fellow Daoist doesn't mind, could you wait for a few days and let me accompany you? Ling Yunhe's gaze froze for a moment. He then looked at her playfully. Fellow Daoist Mo, we had that kind of conflict before, but you're still willing to believe me? Aren't you afraid I'll attack you on the way? Tiange chuckled. Not to mention that I've always been conceited, the Ling Yunhe I know definitely isn't the kind of person who acts behind the scenes. She always remembered the Ling Yunhe who trusted his brothers and friends wholeheartedly in Carefree Valley. Ling Yunhe lowered his head in silence. A crack appeared on the perfect smile on his face. In the end, he sighed and said, I hope I'll always be this Ling Yunhe. In the next moment, he raised his head and put on the perfect mask again. Fellow Daoist Mo, where can I rest? Tiange said happily, thank you, fellow Daoist Ling, for being willing to wait for me. Ling Yunhe waved his hand. I was also invited by fellow Daoist Tianken, so it's just convenient. Even so, thank you. Tiange turned around and called the steward waiting outside, asking him to make arrangements for her. The steward said, the sect head has already given the order. Honored guest, please follow me. Ling Yunhe stood up and cupped his hands towards Tiange. Without saying anything else, he followed the steward and left. Tiange stood in the same place for a while then went out, wanting to return to Clear Spring Peak. Unexpectedly, when she arrived at the Three Pure Palace, she saw Xianxia waiting there. She quickly went to greet him. Why didn't you go back? Xianxia smiled. Instead of answering, he asked, "The person who came was Ling Yunha?" Mo Tiange nodded. "I was about to discuss this matter with you. Let's go back first." She didn't say anything. The two of them left the main peak together and returned to their Immortal's cave on Clear Spring Peak. As they flew, Ling Yunha, who was following behind the steward, raised his head and looked at the two figures in the clouds. He then heaved a long sigh. When they returned to submerged Abyss Valley, none of the disciples were there. Even Xiaoguzi and Xiaozue went to the main peak to help. Only Xiaofeng stayed behind to guard the entrance. The two of them simply didn't enter the Immortal's cave. Instead, they randomly chose a rock floating on the water and sat down, leaning against the mountain and watching the water. Ling Yunha came to deliver a message. Mo Tiange told him about her meeting with Ling Yunha. In the end, she said, "If it's really about the sacrificial temple, I have to go there." She pondered for a while, then asked, "Is Ling Yunha trustworthy?" "It should be," Mo Tiange commented. "Although he's also good at scheming, he always plays overt schemes instead of conspiracies. I think his character is more trustworthy than most people." "But we made a big enemy with Zhuyan's sect in Yunzhong." Mo Tiange smiled and shook her head. "Ling Yunha disdains using this kind of method to take revenge. I believe that." "All right." She didn't dwell on this matter anymore. He said, "I believe you." Mo Tiange turned to look at him and smiled gently. "Then what did Nye Wushang mean?" She frowned slightly. "The sacrificial temple has appeared. Come quickly." "Which sacrificial temple is it, and how did it appear?" Ling Yunha sent a message saying she was entangled by Devil Monarch Moonshadow. "Is that because of this?" "I can confirm the location of several sacrificial temples. The first was the Azure Dragon, which had been destroyed in the East Sea. The second was the Vermilion Bird, which was in a secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins. It was impossible to enter now, and even if it did, it would be useless. The Vermilion Bird Bow and the Prime Fiend Steel were no longer there. The White Tiger was in the westernmost Fengsha city, where the nascent soul cultivators of the Immortal allies were stationed. The rest are the Black Tortoise and the Kirin. The Black Tortoise is in the Jialing Mountain in the clouds, but I have never been there. The Kirin doesn't know." She lightly tapped his knuckles. "The first three are already worthless. Nye Wushang's in Yunzhong, so the one that appeared in the world is most likely Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple. In addition, the Qilin is also possible, if it is also in the clouds." Mo Tiange continued on, "Ling Yunha isn't in a hurry at all, so for now, there hasn't been anyone fighting for it." "What about Demon Lord Yuing? What's going on?" Mo Tiange thought for a while, then said, "I'll ask Ling Yunha tomorrow." She neither objected nor agreed to it. The two of them chatted for a while more before going back to Cultivate. The next day, some people had already returned home, so Xianxia school suddenly became a lot more empty. Mo Tiange and she went to see Lord Daoist Jinghe and reported this matter. Lord Daoist Jinghe was very cautious, so he simply ran to the Three Pure Hall on the main peak and called all the nascent soul Lord Daoists there. After listening to this matter, Xinjiang, Huayan, and the others had the same opinion. They thought they should go, but they had different opinions on whether they should go with Ling Yunha and whether they could be trusted. After discussing for a long time, they finally reluctantly reached an agreement. "Shoujing Qingwei, this is your fated chance, so you can make the decision," Lord Daoist Jinyang said. "But there's one thing you must pay attention to. If Zhou Yan's sect has other people accompanying them, you must stall for time. We'll also send someone to go." Lord Daoist Xinyang originally planned to take another person with them, but unfortunately, they couldn't find anyone to go. Xinyang, Miaoyi, and Xianin had to represent Xianxia School in Kuanzhong City. Now that most of Tiandao sect's forces had withdrawn from the Immortal Alliance, the responsibility fell on Xianxia School, so 3 people were already the least. Jinghe and Huayan guarded the mountain gate. Jinghe was still training disciples, and Huayan was helping Jinghe and stabilizing his realm. Lingxi could have gone with them, but unfortunately, he was cultivating a secret technique at a critical moment. If he stopped abruptly, it would be very harmful to him. Therefore, Lord Daoist Jinyang sighed. No matter how many nascent soul cultivators there were, they wouldn't be enough. Xianxia nodded. We know. Lord Daoist Huayan hesitated for a while and asked, I'm still worried about you too. Qingwei, is your friend really reliable? He had asked this question several times. Xianxia said helplessly, he's really reliable. Don't worry, senior martial brother Huayan. Xianxia thought about it and said, maybe we can find a helper. Everyone's gaze fell on him. Xianxia asked, who? Xingji. Xianxia's answer was within her expectations. Xianxia really wanted to roll her eyes, but there were too many people, so she held back. You really trust him? Xianxia said, I told you, I've known him since I built my foundation. Although he's not a good person, he's one of the few people I can trust. Xingji? Lord Daoist Jinyang was confused. Lord Daoist Jinghe said, he used to be Zhongguang's precious disciple. Venerable swordsman Zhongguang was from the same generation as them, so Lord Daoist Jinyang also knew him. Later on, he also heard that after Venerable swordsman Zhongguang died, he left behind a disciple who was quite marginalized in the sect. However, Venerable swordsman Zhongguang's friendship with them was very ordinary, so there was no need for him to intervene in other people's sect affairs for his disciple, so he didn't know Xingji's name. So it's him. I seem to have heard that this boy betrayed the sect. Lord Daoist Jinghe rolled his eyes. He wasn't afraid of being embarrassed. After that boy betrayed the sect, he advanced to the nascent soul realm. Old man Yuaning later looked for him. In my opinion, he'll return to Gujian's sect sooner or later. Lord Daoist Jinyang thought about it and said, since you trust him, it's up to you. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.